Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by welcoming all of you back. Welcome to Watang Yu. Nice to see all of you guys here. Today's class, we're going to be starting with the chanting and meditation like I taught you guys yesterday. And then after that, we're going to be moving into learning the Eightfold Path, which is the core central teaching of the Buddha. This is the path to enlightenment. If you're interested in awakening the mind to enlightenment and getting to that peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy, it would be the Eightfold Path that you need to learn. And then we're going to be taking a break kind of mid-morning and then coming back and learning a second portion of the Eightfold Path because it's 8 individual factors. And I'm going to be using the original words of the Buddha to dive in and explain to you each aspect of the Eightfold Path and inviting you to learn, reflect, and practice, not believing the teachings of the Buddha, but instead learning them intellectually, reflecting on them to independently verify them, and then to practice them so you can see the results to the condition of the mind. And then we're going to have lunch right around 12:30ish. We'll probably take lunch for a good hour and a half and then come back, and I'm going to share with you guys breathing mindfulness meditation in detail. Even though you've done this yesterday and you're going to do it here in a moment, this afternoon I'm going to be going into detail, explaining it and using the words of the Buddha there so you can see what he was teaching about the breathing mindfulness meditation. So again, welcome to you guys here. Welcome to everyone online who's joining us. If you'd like to join for meditation, I'm going to start with the chanting like we did yesterday and then ease into meditation. I'll be giving you some guidance once we get into the meditation. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet and we'll just be meditating together. And then we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting. And you're welcome to join along in the chants if you like. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Bhutang Mahakevanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakevata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakevato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakeva Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Namasati Satatawa Manusanang Bhoto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes And start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in naturally through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose, or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavantang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. All right. Again, welcome to all of you guys, including those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to everyone online as well. Today is a real pivotal part of your journey on the path to enlightenment because you're going to be learning the core central teaching of the Buddha, a very central teaching. His very first teaching, which is the Four Noble Truths, is going to help you to have this breakthrough where you can finally break through to understanding what's been causing all the anger and sadness and frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, all the discontent feelings, the loneliness, the boredom, the shyness, resentment, jealousy. The Four Noble Truths is a teaching that is the very first step of the Eightfold Path where you can have this breakthrough to understanding what's causing the mind to experience these conditioned feelings. And therefore, once you understand what's causing it, you can then eliminate them. That's what the path to enlightenment is for, is to eliminate these discontent feelings so that the mind's not going up and down and up and down. But you need wisdom to be able to do that. Yes, meditation is important, and that's part of the wisdom that you need to develop and cultivate. It's a tool, a technique to train the mind, but there's other teachings that you need, and that's what the Eightfold Path is going to share with you, is all the different teachings that you need in order to make your way to enlightenment. And then all the rest of the teachings of the Buddha are integrating into the Eightfold Path in one way or another. And like I was sharing yesterday, it's important when you're learning the teachings of the Buddha that you don't believe any of his teachings. There's nothing in the teachings of the Buddha that you believe. It's not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. It's learning, it's investigating, it's examining the teachings, reflecting on them to independently verify them and practice them. I'm going to show you how to do this as I go forward in today's talk. And remember, what we're doing here is awakening to these natural laws of existence. And that's why you're not believing anything, because with belief, you don't know it's true or false. What you're looking to do is get to wisdom. You're on your own independent journey to get to this wisdom where you can see the truth for yourself. And a teacher is like a tour guide, right? We're pointing out to you the things you need to learn and the things you need to understand, but you need to do the work to be able to independently verify that the teachings are true. And that in there, you'll cultivate wisdom and you'll naturally make wiser decisions that then produce wholesome results in your life. Because when you lack wisdom, you're going to make unwise decisions that produce unwholesome results. And I gave you the example of the natural law of gravity, where you've done the same thing, that at one time you didn't understand the natural law of gravity, and therefore you made unwise decisions, and we fell down, we hurt our knees, our elbows, we hit our head, we broke our toys, we had all kinds of struggles and difficulties in the world because of this natural law of gravity that we lacked wisdom of. And there isn't anyone controlling the natural law of gravity, and it's affecting us whether we're aware of it or not. But once we became wise to this natural law, we started making wiser decisions that produced wholesome results for ourselves. And the same thing is occurring with the natural laws that the Buddha taught, is the mind is struggling, it's having difficulties. That's what the anger and the sadness and frustration and all those other discontent feelings are. It's the mind struggling. But when you awaken to the wisdom that the Buddha shares by not believing his teachings, then you can cultivate wisdom. You'll make wiser decisions that produce wholesome results in your life. So as we go, I'm going to pause at different times so you guys can ask questions. And here we have the microphones. If you guys could just press the gray button, wait a couple seconds, and then hold it up to your chin. We'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you on the live stream and on the internet. And you're welcome to keep those mics with you, because you might have more than one question and you can share the mics around. And then for those of you guys online, you can ask questions through putting those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and I'll be able to see you, and you can open up your mic and ask any questions that you like. Okay, let me just switch over to some visual aids for the online folks here. Okay, so this Eightfold Path is organized into 3 sections. The Eightfold Path, or the 8 factors, are right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. I'm going to walk you through, using the words of the Buddha, each one of these factors, and I'm going to show you how to learn it. I'm going to show you how to reflect on it, to verify it, and I'm going to show you how to practice it. It's organized into these 3 categories: wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. And it all starts with right view. If you didn't establish right view, none of the rest of the Eightfold Path or none of the rest of what the Buddha taught is going to make any sense whatsoever. So he would start his students with right view. And what right view is the Four Noble Truths. These are the words of the Buddha. He says, "And what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view." What he's doing here is he's pointing to another teaching that he has. It's called the Four Noble Truths. And he's saying that is right view. But then what you do is you go learn and you study and you reflect and you practice the Four Noble Truths, which is a separate teaching. He didn't explain the entire Four Noble Truths in his Eightfold Path, because the Eightfold Path is integrating the teachings together. So underneath of this line here, I just have the top section of the Four Noble Truths. There's more here that he taught related to the Four Noble Truths, but I'm just showing you this so that you can build confidence that what he's pointing to in the Eightfold Path related to right view is the Four Noble Truths. And then now I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths. And in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand what's called the 3 universal truths. We call them truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true, and other people know that they're true too. But in order for you to benefit, that's where you need to know they're true. And that's why you need to do the work to learn and understand and then independently verify these. So I'll walk you through each one of these and show you how to do that. The first one is called the universal truth of impermanence. This is where you learn about how everything around the world, around you, that you can see, that you can hear, that you can smell, that you taste, that comes in contact with the body, and then the thoughts that you have in your mind, these are all impermanent. Everything's constantly changing. There's not a permanent fixed state around you. Remember, what the Buddha is doing is he's teaching you how the world is. He's not teaching you the way the world should be with a bunch of rules and commandments. He's teaching you the way the world is. And by understanding the way the world is, your mind awakens to the natural laws of existence. So these are building blocks that I'm going to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. So what he's explaining to you is the way the world is that everything around you is impermanent. It's constantly changing. This is what's called a conditioned object. A conditioned object arises, it changes, and then it fades away. It's constant change. Okay, so this is a little bit about the universal truth of impermanence. There is something called an unconditioned object. There's enlightenment itself is an unconditioned object, and the natural laws of existence that the Buddha taught is an unconditioned object. They don't change, they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. They're constant and fixed. So all conditioned objects are going to be impermanent. And everything around you that you can see, hear, smell, taste, that comes in contact with the body or thoughts, these are all conditioned objects. So this is a little bit of the learning about the universal truth of impermanence, that things are constantly changing. So you just learned it, and you're starting to understand it intellectually, but you don't believe it. What you do is you start reflecting on it now to try to independently verify whether it's true or it's false. Because if this is universal truth, you should be able to discern the wisdom of that and be able to see it for yourself. You're not believing a teacher. Okay, so what you do is you look around the world and you try to find something that is permanent. Because if you can find something in the world that is permanent, what I just said is untrue. But if you can't find something around the world that is permanent, then you can understand that this is a universal truth and you'll have acquired wisdom about the world. So what I suggest you do is you start with something that you're very familiar with, like the human body. You're very familiar with this human body. Ask yourself, is this body permanent, meaning it never changes? Or is this body impermanent, meaning there's been constant change with this physical body? So what would you say? Is the body permanent? Or is it impermanent? 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 Is it permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's constantly changing. Ever since we were conceived in our mother's womb, the body's been constantly changing. Okay, what about your relationships? Have you had exactly the same people in your life your entire life, meaning your relationships are permanent? Or have people been coming and going in and out of your life ever since you have been having relationships, meaning your relationships are impermanent? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? You're saying impermanent. Impermanent? Impermanent? Your relationships are impermanent? Yeah? Okay, your relationships are impermanent, right? They're constantly changing. What would you say about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or is it impermanent? Impermanent? What would you say, Michael? Impermanent? Impermanent? Okay, it's going up and down and up and down. Sometimes your bank account goes up, up, up. Sometimes it goes down, down, down. It's always constantly changing, right? What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, right? It's constantly changing. So we could go on and on and on. And if you need to do this so that you can see the truth for yourself. You can look around the world, like look at the walls of the temple. The walls are impermanent. You can see that at one time they were probably painted nice and white, and now they've got some holes, they've got some marks. The building's been here for over 50 years, so it's been constantly changing. You can be walking down the sidewalk and you see a crack in the sidewalk. This is impermanence. Or here in Thailand, the height of the sidewalk even changes. It goes up and down sometimes, depending on where you go, right? The color, the shape, the texture, all is changing. Some streets have sidewalks, some streets don't. That's impermanence. You see a fence and the paint on the fence is fading. That's impermanence, right? This physical body, we get bigger, we get smaller, we get gray hair, we lose our hair, we get teeth that falls out, we get cavities, the color of our skin changes, we get moles, we get pimples, we get wrinkles. All of this is constant change. Okay, so this is the first universal truth. And it's a building block to be able to understand what I'm going to teach you in the Four Noble Truths. So everything is constantly changing around you. The second universal truth is the universal truth of discontentedness. This is explaining to you the unenlightened mind. Now, some people use the word suffering here. I don't use the word suffering, but you'll see this commonly in the teachings that people share related to the Buddha. The Buddha used the original word of dukkha. This is the word that he used in the Pali Canon, is this word dukkha. And some people are translating that to suffering. I translate it to either discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. So I'm going to explain to you what the Buddha taught about this, and then I'm going to circle back and explain to you why I don't use the word suffering. So when the Buddha talks about dukkha, he describes 3 feelings that the unenlightened mind experiences: pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. The pleasant feelings are feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. These are very pleasant for the mind to experience. Then there's painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These are all very painful for the mind to experience. And then there's neither painful nor pleasant. I put boredom and loneliness in there. Some people say that's quite painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category. But shyness is a very good example of neither painful nor pleasant. It's not painful. It's not pleasant. It's neither painful nor pleasant. Or if someone you don't know came and sat really close to you, if you were like on a bus in public transportation and their body was touching your body or your body was touching their body, you'd probably say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant. Your mind's kind of maybe uncomfortable or dissatisfied in that situation. Okay, so this is what neither painful nor pleasant is. So what the Buddha is explaining to you is what's called conditioned feelings, that the unenlightened mind is going to experience these conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, your mind is going to then experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant. So for example, in the unenlightened state, somebody could wake up and see that it's sunny outside, and they could get so happy, so excited. Yay, it's sunny outside. I'm going to go hiking. I'm going to spend time with my friends. Oh, it's going to be so fun. I'm going to go outside and play. So they just formed a feeling of happiness and excitement based on the condition of the sun. That because there's a sun, I'm going to now be happy. I've formed my inner feeling based on this condition of the sun. But now they go take a shower and they come out and they see that it's raining. And now they're sad, or they're frustrated, or they're irritated. Because they formed their inner feeling of happiness based on that condition of the sun is not permanent. It is impermanent. So therefore, the happiness that's in the mind is also impermanent. It's a conditioned feeling. It arose, it changed, and it faded away. This is what the mind's doing in the unenlightened state, whether it's the weather, like the sun, or whether it's your bank account. If it's one balance, you'll be happy. And if it's another balance, you'll be sad. Or if your mom does this, you'll be happy. Or she does this, you'll be sad or frustrated. Or any number of different things like this. The mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. This is what the unenlightened mind is doing. Having conditional feelings, going up and down and up and down and up and down. In the enlightened state, you're beyond all of this. You've trained your mind to no longer form conditioned feelings. When you wake up in the morning as an enlightened being, you're already happy. Before you even saw that it was sunny outside, you're already happy. And then you see it's sunny outside, sweet. I'm going to go hiking with my friends. This is going to be a great day. We're going to go out and have a blast. This is going to be a good time. And now you go take a shower and you come out and it's raining. Okay, it's raining, so I guess we can't go hiking. Maybe we'll go to the mall. Maybe I'll invite my friends over. I'll cook dinner for them. Or maybe I'll just stay home and read a book. No big deal. It's raining. You can maintain your joy. Your joy wasn't based on the sun. So therefore, when the sun's gone, you can maintain that joy, that you haven't gone up and down with your emotions because you don't form your feelings based on these conditions. So this universal truth of impermanence is explaining to you the unenlightened mind, that the unenlightened mind is going to experience conditioned feelings of pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, where the enlightened mind is beyond all of this. It's experiencing unconditioned mental qualities. So here, the word discontent, discontented, and discontentedness explains the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. If you've ever been so excited that your mind was shaken up, that you like fell down and tripped or something like that, that's because your mind's discontent. Or if you've been sad or angry and frustrated, you know your mind is discontent. Or if you've been sitting next to somebody you don't know and your body was touching their body and your mind was kind of uncomfortable and dissatisfied, your mind was discontent or discontented, or you were experiencing discontentedness based on some condition. Well, some people translate this to be suffering. And in my opinion, the word suffering explains the painful feelings really well, right? The sadness, the anger, the frustration, the irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. You might say you're suffering in that situation. But when you're happy or excited, would you say you were suffering? Probably not, right? Or if you were shy, or if that person came and sat next to you on the bus and your body was touching their body, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering in that situation. So if we continue to use the word suffering, it's only explaining the painful feelings, which is 33% of what the Buddha is talking about on this important teaching. And you're missing 66% of his teachings. If you're missing 66% of a person's teachings, how would you ever be able to get to the ultimate goal of enlightenment, which is the ultimate goal? You would need to understand the entire teachings. So I don't use the word suffering because it doesn't explain the full range of feelings and emotions that the Buddha is describing in this universal truth. So instead, I encourage people to use the word discontent, discontented, and discontentedness. This will give your mind a full understanding of what it is that the Buddha is describing on this important topic. So the way that you independently verify this, because I just gave you the intellectual learning, the way you independently verify this is you know that your mind is unenlightened. That's why you're here. You're looking to learn and try to figure out how to get to enlightenment. Well, if this is explaining the unenlightened mind, then you should be able to look over the course of your life and all the different feelings that you've experienced, and this should be describing that. So every feeling that you've ever had should be able to fit into one of these three categories. If there's a feeling that you've had that you think that doesn't fit into one of these three categories, you can let me know when we get to the question period and we can talk about it and we can discuss it. So you should be able to see every single feeling you've ever had is described by pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant. And that's how you independently verify this for yourself, that the Buddha is indeed describing a universal truth, that universally all unenlightened beings will experience these three feelings. Then there's the universal truth of non-self. This one is actually a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. If you remember from yesterday, we talked about the 10 fetters just a little bit. Those are the 10 pollutions or the defilements or the taints that are in the mind. These are what's keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state. It's like a shackle and a chain and a ball keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state. And what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're purifying the mind of these 10 fetters or these 10 pollutions. Well, the very first pollution is called personal existence view. This is where the mind in the unenlightened state is holding on to this body and or the mind thinking that this is you. The mind is confused, it's misunderstanding, it's holding on to this self-image and or the self-identity that's in the mind, holding on to this, clinging to it, thinking that this is who you are as a person. And as long as the mind's doing this, you're going to experience discontentedness. So for example, if you're clinging to this self-image, thinking that this is who you are, when you spill chocolate ice cream or pizza sauce on your clothing in a public setting, you'll get embarrassed, because you're not being perceived in the world the way you want to be perceived. You think that this body is you, and when it's not being perceived the way you want to be perceived, you'll get frustrated or agitated or embarrassed or some other discontent feeling. Or if you get a mole or a pimple in a place that you're not interested in having that, you'll maybe look in the mirror and be frustrated or agitated. Or if you get a wrinkle or you get gray hair or you're losing your hair or you get a little bit of extra fat here or there, you'll get discontent because of this, because the mind's clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are. Or say that somebody compliments you and says something about your appearance, says, wow, you look so handsome in that shirt. It really brings out the colors of your eyes. Or wow, that jewelry really makes your face look so beautiful. You look so charming, right? You'll get all these conditioned pleasant feelings based on the condition that somebody's complimenting this physical body. And the mind thinks that this is who you are, so it gets these conditioned pleasant feelings. But because of impermanence, it's only a matter of time before somebody says something negative and degrading and disparaging about this self-image. And if you cling to this and you think that this is who you are, when somebody says something negative and degrading and disparaging about this body, you will get angry, you will get frustrated or get annoyed or some other discontent feeling. And the same thing is occurring for the mind. There's a certain identity that the mind is clinging to based on your culture, maybe your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, maybe your nationality or your job or something like this. And as long as the mind's clinging to that, thinking that this is who you are, once again, you'll be shaken up. Because when somebody says something complimentary about maybe where you come from, like I am American, if your mind is holding on to that identity, or I am Thai, or I am Japanese, I am Indian, I am Chinese, I am, I forget where you're from, Michael, where are you from? UK. That's right. I am a Brit, right? Any of this I am, or I am a Buddhist teacher, or I am a police officer, I am a lawyer. If somebody says something positive, you identify with that and you'll get pleasant feelings, right? But then if somebody says something negative and degrading and disparaging, you'll get painful feelings. And you can't control what other people say and what other people do. So if you're at a restaurant eating dinner, minding your own business, and 2 tables over, somebody is talking negatively about people from Britain or Americans or Thai or Chinese or Indian or Japanese, or your job or your occupation or anything that your mind is holding on to as your identity of who you are, and now someone's being negative and degrading and disparaging, you'll get frustrated, you'll get agitated, and you might even turn to unskillful conduct. You know, people have been in fights and people have been murdered over things like this, right? And people have thrown their life away because of this personal existence view. The mind's clinging to a certain identity, wanting this to be permanent. So if you've ever had a job or occupation and you were in that job and you identified with that as who you are, and then maybe you lost your job, maybe you got laid off, maybe you got fired, maybe you retired, you might feel like a part of you is missing, like a part of you is gone. You don't feel whole anymore because you're not doing this job or occupation anymore. Or say you were in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend and you identify with I am a boyfriend or I am a girlfriend, and now your relationship is over. You might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because you weren't comfortable being single, because you don't identify that way. Your mind doesn't identify as I am single. The mind identifies as I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend. And now when that's no longer intact because of impermanence, things changing, you'll struggle. You'll feel lost. I am no longer a boyfriend. I'm no longer a girlfriend. I'm no longer a husband. I'm no longer a wife. If you've been through a divorce or something like this, or say you have kids that live with you and then they move away, and you feel like I am not a mom anymore. You feel like you're not there to teach them and guide them in the way that you once did. So there's all these roles that the mind can adopt as its identity around culture, ethnicity, sexual orientation, nationality, your job or occupation, and a number of other things. You can have so many different countless identities that the mind's holding on to. And again, if you have complementary contact, agreeable contact, you'll get those pleasant feelings. But if you have disagreeable contact, you'll get these painful feelings. There's people who come to Thailand regularly in search of themselves. They feel like they've lost their true self. They don't even know who they are anymore. I need to go find myself. They will come to Thailand or other places in the world and travel and try to find themselves. They feel like they don't know who they are anymore. Well, they're never going to find themselves. They might find new hobbies. They might find new activities. They might find new friends. They might find a new occupation. But none of that stuff is you. But the mind will cling to these things thinking this is you. You will never find yourself because the self does not exist. That's what the Buddha is teaching you in the universal truth of non-self, that there is no self. He's explaining this to you so that you don't cling to this body nor this mind thinking that this is who you are, because then you're going to open yourself up to discontentedness. So the mind needs to get to a point where it realizes non-self, where the mind realizes that this body nor this mind is you. But the challenge is all throughout society and ever since you were born, people have been talking to you in ways to reinforce the self. In fact, we were all given names and labels when we were born. I was given the label David. And then the mind thinks, I am David, right? And now you have this self-image and the self-identity that gets wrapped around that. And we start thinking that we should go off into the world and I am David, right? If somebody says, all people who are named David are lovely and kind and friendly and warm, wow, you feel all these pleasant feelings. But then if somebody says, people who are named David are blah, 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 right? Negative and degrading things. Now you feel diminished, right? Because you're identifying with this name. So all throughout our life, we've been having this identity that's getting more and more firmly rooted in the mind. And this is why oftentimes people find it challenging to understand this universal truth and the pollution of personal existence view. What the pollution of personal existence view is it's sharing with you that as long as your mind holds on to this self-image or this self-identity, thinking this is who you are, you will experience discontentedness related to that. What the universal truth of non-self is explaining to you is that this body nor this mind is you. It's not who you are. There is a body and there is a mind, and they've come together for this existence. And we refer to this as a person or a human being. But none of this is you. None of this is who you are as a person. So now, no matter what your body looks like, no matter what your face looks like, you can maintain your joy and your peace. Whereas if you think that this body or this mind is you, when things are changing, you're not going to be comfortable with that change. Okay, so this is a little bit on the universal truth of non-self. And now you need to reflect on it in order to independently verify it. So let me show you how to do that. Think about yourself when you were a child, a teenager, early adulthood, and now. Think about how you viewed yourself. When you were thinking about your character or your personality over those 4 phases of life, childhood, teenage years, early adulthood, and now, have you been exactly the same person all the way through that, or has your image and your thoughts of yourself been constantly changing? What would you say? Constantly changing, constantly changing, constantly changing, right? So here you can see there is no permanent self. That's one way. Here's another way. If your arm was amputated and you only had one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? Shaking your head no? You're shaking your head no? 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 So there you go. Intellectually, you understand that this body is not you. Because otherwise, when I asked you that question, you would say, yes, I am less of a person because I have no hand and no arm. This body is me, and when it's amputated, I'm less of a person. But you didn't say that. You said, no, I'm not less of a person. So intellectually, you know that this body is not you. But that's where the mind's confused. It has the misunderstanding. Because when somebody says something about this physical body, you get frustrated or angry or irritated or some other discontent feeling. That's the confusion that the mind has because of personal existence view. Here's another way that you can independently verify this. Point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point? Okay, Rex is pointing here, Nina's pointing here. Okay, sometimes people point here, right? This is common. Okay, so look at what you're pointing to. Look at what you're literally pointing to. What you're pointing to is a shirt. That's what you're pointing to. Okay? So if I took off my shirt and I held it up, is that me? Is that who you are? That shirt you're wearing? Is that you? You guys are shaking your head no. That's not you, right? Okay, so let's throw away the shirt. Where are you? Can you point? Somebody's pointing. Okay, more people are pointing. Okay, so now you don't have a shirt on. Pretend you don't have a shirt on. What are you pointing to? You're pointing to skin. That's what you're pointing to. You're pointing to skin. So if we took off the skin and we held up the skin, is that you? That skin that you got? Is that who you are? That skin? Is that you? That's not you, is it? Okay, so we throw away the skin. Where are you? Someone might point. Okay, Nina's still pointing, right? So she's pointing here. So we don't have skin. What are we pointing to? Bones, muscle tissue, fluid, you're saying the mind. None of these things are you. These are all little bits and pieces and parts. But the problem is that the mind is confused, thinking that this is who you are. The mind's going to keep grasping and longing, yearning, and trying to hold on to something and say, this is me, this is who I am. But as long as you keep doing that, then the personal existence view is well rooted in the mind, and you'll get pleasant feelings when somebody's complimentary about certain things, and you'll get painful feelings when somebody's negative and degrading, or you're not being perceived in the world the way you want to be perceived. You'll defend this self-image and this self-identity. So if somebody says something positive about Thai people, you'll get pleasant feelings. But if somebody says something negative or degrading or disparaging, if you're holding on to your mind thinking that you are Thai, I am Thai, then you'll get angry or frustrated or irritated because the mind is identifying with that's who I am as a person. So this body was born in America, but I am not American. Right? The mind doesn't identify that way. I know that this body was born in a land that we call America. That's what we call it. At one time, it wasn't called that. It was just born in a particular place in the world. It was just on a piece of land, right? That's where it was born. And the mind, early in life, had adopted the identity of I am American. But not anymore. I've let that go. So while I know that this body was born on a land that is currently referred to as America, the mind doesn't identify with I am American. But see, the different countries want you to believe that I am American, or I am Thai, or I am Indian. We have national anthems, we have flags, we have all different kinds of things to build that identity. Because now you'll invest. Now you'll work hard to build up that place, right? So all throughout your life, you've been incentivized to adopt this identity of who you are, or look at this body as who you are. Because now you'll buy products to make this body look a certain way, right? But the Buddha is teaching you that this body nor this mind is you, that there is no self. Okay, so these are the three universal truths that you can independently verify for yourself. The universal truth of impermanence, the universal truth of discontentedness, and the universal truth of non-self. These are building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. Let me pause here and see what questions you guys have, and then I'm going to take you into the Four Noble Truths and help you understand that. Do you guys have any questions here or online? You can ask questions through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions you like. Rex has a question.
I've had this question since yesterday. When it said in the previous slide, it said that you need to eliminate self. One of the first slides from yesterday.
Oh, okay.
When they were talking about
the personal existence view.
Yeah,
yep.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. The first one was the elimination of self.
Mm-hmm.
And my question yesterday was, did you mean the elimination of self or subduing self? And then today we come back to the self, the permanent self.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, if you eliminate the mind and the body, have you eliminated, you must have some point of reference.
So you're not eliminating the physical structures of the body. And you're not eliminating the mind. What you're doing is you're eliminating
the identity,
the belief or the confusion or the misunderstanding that this body is you, or that this mind is you, or this self-image is you, or this self-identity is you. So for example, I wear these white clothes. It helps you to have, that's why the Buddha wore basic simple robes, so he's not projecting a certain self-image. This is why he cut his hair, because he's not interested in projecting a certain self-image. But even with this, let's just say the mind was clinging to this, and I went outside and someone's like, oh wow, you look so handsome in those white clothes. Okay, if your mind is clinging to this, then you would get those pleasant feelings. But then somebody else might say, you're so stupid for wearing those white clothes. Like, what happens when, you have to work on your motorbike and, you're going to get all dirty? Like, who would ever wear all white clothes? That's so stupid. right? If you hear that, because you can't control what people say. Now, if you identify with that, or you see this as who you are, now you're going to get frustrated or irritated. So you're not eliminating the body itself, and you're not eliminating the mind. You're eliminating the identity, thinking that this is who you are, that personal existence view. You're training the mind to no longer look at this body or this mind as being who you are, that you realize there is a body and it's constantly changing, and there is a mind and it's constantly changing. You're performing different roles in the world, but none of those things are you. So that way, if you're a police officer for 10 years, for example, and you get injured and you can no longer do that job, and now you decide to be a social worker, you can be perfectly content. But if you identify with, I am a police officer, when you get injured on the job and you can't do that job anymore, you'll struggle. You'll have difficulties because you had that as part of your identity in your mind. And now you'll be really torn about leaving this job, and you'll feel very miserable that you had to leave. But because of impermanence, you can't do any one particular thing permanently. It's not possible. So as soon as you adopt the identity of this is who I am, things are going to start changing and you'll be uncomfortable. Or as soon as you cling to this body, wanting it to be permanent, now when impermanence is happening, you'll be uncomfortable because of that. So the Buddha is teaching you not to cling to this body nor the mind. He's not teaching you to eliminate the body or eliminate the mind. He's teaching you to eliminate the clinging to it, thinking that this is who you are. Make sense?
Yeah, it does, because it's relating back to impermanence and discontentedness.
Mm-hmm. It's going to make a whole lot of sense when I go to the next one, which is explaining the Four Noble Truths, because this is the building blocks to help you understand that. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
With a lot of this, the impermanence and so on and so forth, it depends what stages we're at in life, doesn't it? You know, you get jobs, particularly if you've got responsibilities, and you might do jobs that you don't necessarily like, but you're in the rat race. You've got to pay rent, mortgages, school fees, so on and so forth. And working environments, you've just got to sort of buckle down. But as you sort of, I won't say break through the shackles, but if your responsibilities become less, then that impermanence sort of travels on. Whereas the sort of unpleasant feelings and so on and so forth could be because you're in environments that society deems that you've really got to just basically struggle on and get through. Does that make any sense?
That's what the unenlightened mind is going to do, is what you're describing, is just struggle through and think that they're need to conform to what society's doing, and I got to just struggle through this. But what you're going to be learning as part of the Eightfold Path is how to no longer struggle, is how to look at life in a different way through the wisdom of the natural laws of existence. And now through practicing those natural laws, you can get to the peace and joy no matter what age. You can get to enlightenment as early as 7 years old. During the lifetime of the Buddha, people got to enlightenment at the age of 7. And at any stage during your life, you can get to enlightenment. You don't have to just struggle through life the way that you're describing. I'm going to explain to you what's causing your discontent feelings in the Four Noble Truths, and then you'll be able to see it more clearly. And then the rest of the Eightfold Path is going to teach you even things like your occupation and your job, how to do this in a way that doesn't cause harm, so that way you can have enthusiasm and motivation about the work that you do. Because work doesn't have to feel like a drag, right? Like, we call it work, and work kind of is a 4-letter word, right? It's like, I gotta go to work. I don't feel that way when I come here. When I come here, I'm like, wow, all right, I get to share the teachings with people to help them get to enlightenment. Or even before, when I used to own my own businesses, I really enjoyed the work that I was doing. So you can get to a point where you're enthused and motivated and encouraged about the work that you do. But when the mind doesn't understand these natural laws, you'll tend to take a job just for the money, or just for the location or the coworkers or some other reason, and then it'll feel like a real drag to go to work each day. But you can get past all of that and get to the point where you thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing, and you're peaceful in all aspects of your life, including your job.
Oh, well, I do actually feel quite happy these days. I'm saying for decade or two or whatnot because of responsibilities and not being able to sort of necessarily move on from jobs I didn't particularly like but had to finance quite a lot of stuff, then you just sort of buckle down. So just a sort of stage of maturity or whatever.
You could have moved on from those jobs, but you chose not to because the mind was holding on, it sounds like, to the money. That you
of course,
you wanted to make a certain amount of money. So you're going to see in the Four Noble Truths why your mind was discontent during that time because of what the mind was doing. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions here. So let me move on to the next part, which is another building block to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. This is something called craving, desire, attachment, wants, expectations, this holding, grasping, clinging. This is a certain aspect of the mind. This is where the mind is longing and yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. We call this a craving, a desire, attachment. The mind's longing, yearning, thinking something outside of you is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases after it and holds on to it. So if you've ever been in the mall and you've been walking through the mall and you're like, oh, a new pair of shoes. Oh, yes, I just can't wait. Oh, these new pair of shoes is going to be perfect. Oh, I just can't wait to get those shoes. Or maybe a new computer or a new phone or a new video game or a new pair of shoes or a new watch or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Oh, I just can't wait to get that thing. It's going to make everything perfect in my life. I just can't wait to get it. Right? This is the craving, desire, attachment. The mind's pulling towards this thing. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you experienced this before? Yeah? Okay. So this is called a craving, desire, attachment. Okay. So now I'm going to explain to you the Four Noble Truths. In 4 simple statements, you're going to understand the problem in the unenlightened mind. You're going to understand the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. So the first noble truth is everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. This is the problem. This is the problem you're experiencing, is conditioned feelings. Those pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. The conditioned feelings, because they arise, they change, and they fade away. So that conditional happiness is ultimately displeasing and unsatisfactory because it's not permanent. By the time you get to enlightenment, you're experiencing permanent happiness, permanent joy. But the conditional happiness and excitement and elation, it's unsatisfying because it's ultimately going to fade away. It's going to be gone, right? So the mind's going up and down with pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. This is describing the problem. The second noble truth is describing the cause of that problem. The cause of the problem is discontentedness, which is discontentedness is the problem, is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments. Because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. So I'm going to say that a few times, and then I'm going to show you how to reflect on it. I'm going to give you some examples. So those discontent feelings, those pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant, the conditioned feelings are caused by craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. The mind wants things to be permanent, but yet everything in the world around you is impermanent. So if the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings, happy, excited, elated, thrilled, euphoria. But if it doesn't get what it wants, those cravings, desires, attachments, those expectations aren't fulfilled, now the painful feelings, the anger, the sadness, the frustration, the irritation, the annoyance, the guilt, the shame, the fear, the stress, the anxiety, that comes into the mind because it's not getting what it wants. So here's some examples for you. Say you've been in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and when you guys first got together, you probably got a lot of pleasant feelings, right? Oh, they're showing me affection. Oh, they're taking me out and inviting me to dinner. Oh, we're going to the movies. We're going to the park. Maybe you're having great conversations. Maybe you're having intimate contact. Oh, pleasant feelings, lots of pleasant feelings based on the condition of having this partner. But now, over a period of time, things change, and now you guys break up. And now you're sad. Now you're frustrated. Now you're maybe feeling lonely or bored, right? Maybe you're feeling angry or annoyed or disappointed. This is because the mind is craving permanence. It's wanting this relationship to be permanent, when in reality, this relationship was always impermanent. But the unenlightened mind didn't understand that. The unenlightened mind doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence. It doesn't realize that all these things around you are impermanent. So when you got in that relationship and you were experiencing all those pleasant feelings, the mind was holding on to it and clinging and wanting it to be permanent, not realizing that it is impermanent. Even if you guys were together for the rest of your lives, more likely than not, one of you would have died first, right? So this relationship is not causing the mind to be angry or frustrated. It's the craving, desire, attachment in the mind. It's the longing, the yearning. So like when grandma or grandpa die, or mom or dad or brothers and sisters die, it's not your love that's causing you to grieve or be sorrowful. It's your mind craving permanence, wanting them to be permanent. When grandma's alive, you'll be happy. But when grandma's dead, now you'll be sad or frustrated. The mind doesn't understand impermanence, that because she was born, she had to die. We all die for exactly the same reason. Because we were born, that's why we die. We all die for exactly the same reason. We're all impermanent. Love is a genuine interest in seeing others be well, seeing all beings be well. A genuine interest in seeing beings be well. That's what love is. That doesn't cause painful feelings. What's causing the painful feelings is that you're craving for grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, brothers, and sisters to be permanent, but they are impermanent. So if you've ever been to a funeral and you've cried or been sorrowful, this is not because you're a bad person or you've done anything wrong. It's just that the mind's attached. It's holding on. It's clinging. It's wanting this permanence. But yet you live in an impermanent world. If you've ever been to a wedding and you've been sorrowful at a wedding or cry, same thing. You're at this ceremony, somebody's going off into the world with another person. This represents impermanence to you. You want them to be with you permanently. Your mind's holding on to them. So you cry or you grieve. Or if you've ever been dropped off at university, or you dropped your children off at university and you kind of grieved a little bit when you dropped them off, this is the mind craving and holding on, clinging, wanting permanence. It's not the love that's causing that. Here's another example. Say you get a brand new car, and you got this brand new car and you got all these pleasant feelings. And now you take this car and you park it at a store and you go inside and you come out and there's a scratch on your car. You might get frustrated. You might get irritated or annoyed. It's not the scratch that's causing the frustration. It's not the person who caused the scratch. They're not causing you to be frustrated. What's causing you to be frustrated is that your mind's craving permanence, wanting this car to look permanently beautiful, when in reality, this car is impermanent. It was always impermanent, but the unenlightened mind doesn't understand that. It craves for this car to be permanent. The upholstery is going to rip, the paint's going to fade, the tires are going to need to be changed. This is all impermanence, but the mind craves permanence. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise here, because it'd be wonderful if nobody ever scratched your car. But that's not the world you live in. You live in a world that is impermanent. And as long as the mind's craving permanence, you'll be angry, you'll be frustrated, you'll be irritated or annoyed in this situation. So the mind's craving permanence. And when it gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. And when it doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings. So this is what I'm teaching you on the second noble truth. But now you don't believe that. That's the learning part. Now you reflect on it. The way you reflect on what I'm sharing with you is your mind's causing your own discontentedness. It's not the outside things. It's your own mind causing these feelings. So now when you reflect on this, think about a recent time when you've been angry or sad or frustrated or irritated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. It might have been this morning, it might have been yesterday, it might have been last week. Think about that situation that occurred. Now, at that time, you might have been looking for someone else to blame, because this is what the unenlightened mind will typically do, is it'll blame somebody else. You might have been looking for someone else to blame. But now with this new wisdom, with these fresh eyes, look at that situation. What is it that you wanted? If you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, you got sad or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. You should be able to directly, independently verify this and see for yourself that your mind's causing your own discontent feelings. Because what the mind will tend to do in the unenlightened state when it has wrong view, what wrong view is thinking that something externally is causing your discontent feelings, blaming other people. What you will tend to do when you misunderstand this, and this is all unenlightened beings will tend to do this, not just you, is you'll associate your painful feelings with this person or this situation. And then when you feel that anger, that sadness, the frustration, you will push them away. You will try to push them out of your life. This is called aversion, where you try to push the situation or you push the person out of your life. And the mind thinks that it's solving the problem because it's misunderstanding what the true cause of the problem is. It thinks the problem is brother, sister, husband, wife, somebody else. So the mind will push that person out of your life. But that doesn't solve the problem because it's not the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem is your craving, desire, attachment. If this was the true cause, when you push that person away, you wouldn't get angry or frustrated anymore because you just solved your problem. But when you push that person out of your life, you still get angry. You still get irritated. You still get annoyed because that's not the true cause of the problem. Or the other thing you'll do when you misunderstand and you have wrong view is you will be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people with your intentions, your speech, and your actions. You'll be aggressive and bitter and harsh, have animosity towards them. And then they might choose to leave out of your life because you were bitter and harsh and hostile with them. Or the third thing you might do is you might put your expectations on this person, trying to control them and get them to do things your way. Because the mind thinks if I can just get what I want, then everything will be perfect. But the thing is you can't get what you want permanently. It's not possible. So what the unenlightened mind will tend to do is try to teach people around you to do things your way. And the mind thinks if people will just do things my way, this world will be perfect. But the problem is there's 8 billion people in the world. You can't train 8 billion people to do things your way. You can only train one mind. Do you know whose mind that is that you can train? What'd you say? Yourself, your own mind. That's the only thing you can train. You can't train 8 billion people to do things your way. So as long as you have craving, desire, attachment in the mind, you'll misunderstand the problem. You'll keep getting angry and irritated and annoyed. You'll misunderstand the problem and you'll push people away. You'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile, and you'll put your expectations on people, and people will choose to leave out of your life. So the number of people that you can spend time with is going to become fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer because your expectations are just growing and growing and growing. You're wanting more and more and more. And it's only a matter of time before somebody does something you disagree with. And when you disagree with what they do, you push them away. Or you become bitter, harsh, and hostile. Or you put your expectations on them and try to control them because the mind wants things to be a certain way. So this is what happens when the mind has wrong view. But what right view is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. It's your own mind causing the anger and the frustration and the irritation and the annoyance. This can be sometimes really challenging to come to terms with, to be able to look back over your life and to realize every single time you've ever been angry or irritated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling, it's been your mind that's causing it. But what we did in the past is we blamed other people. We argued and we fought to death trying to convince people that they were doing things wrong and they needed to change, when in reality it was your own mind that needs to change. Now, other people surely might have done things that were unwise, but they're not the ones who are causing you to be angry or frustrated. And the beauty in this is if you understand that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings, the beauty is that you can eliminate them. This is why you can get to enlightenment. Is because your mind's causing it, so therefore you can eliminate it, right? If it's everyone else that's causing the problems in your life, then you got to fix everybody else. You're perfect. You go home, send everybody else to come to the temple. You're perfect, right? But that's not true, right? It's not everyone else causing your mind to be discontent. So if you can understand right view and you'd establish right view and understand your own mind's causing these discontent feelings, this is very empowering. Because now, because your mind's causing it, you can actually fix it. You can eliminate it. We're not talking about blame or fault or anything like that. We're talking about what's causing the mind to experience these discontent feelings. It's the longing, the yearning, the craving, the wanting things to be a certain way. And if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. And if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. So this is the second noble truth, explaining to you that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. And this is how you establish right view. The right view is your mind's causing your own discontent feelings. That's why you'll need to train your mind in order to eliminate them. And then the third noble truth is explaining the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. So when you eliminate holding on to things, wanting them to be permanent, you'll be liberated from those feelings. You won't be angry and bitter and harsh and hostile or frustrated or agitated or annoyed any longer. So you need to train your mind to eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments. You can independently verify this too. Think about that boyfriend or girlfriend that you were with, that you were craving and that you were holding on to. When you guys broke up, you felt bored, you felt lonely, you felt angry, you felt sad, you felt frustrated. At some point, you were like, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. Or if she wants to be with someone else, so be it. I don't care anymore. I'm just going to let him go. And all of a sudden, you started feeling peaceful. You started feeling more joy again. But up to that point, you were angry. You were bitter. You were hostile. But then at some point, you were like, you know what? Forget it. If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. Or if she wants to be with someone else, go for it. I'm done. It's over. And you were peaceful after that because your mind had let go, right? So the Buddha teaches you various teachings to train your mind how to let go. Because in the unenlightened state, it doesn't have the wisdom. It doesn't have the discipline or the control to let go. It's holding on because of its lack of wisdom and its lack of training. So the fourth noble truth is explaining to you the complete solution. The Buddha is saying that the path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. That's what's going to eliminate all your discontentedness by training your mind on the Eightfold Path. So this Eightfold Path is the complete perfect plan that when you understand this and you practice it, you will eliminate your cravings and then you'll be able to get to peace and joy, the liberation of mind. You'll no longer have those discontent feelings. So this is the complete perfect plan, but it starts with right view. Right view is your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. It's craving, desire, attachment that's causing those, the longing, the yearning. Wrong view would be to blame other people for what you're experiencing. And as long as you have wrong view, you'll never get to peace. You'll never get to joy because that's not the true problem. It's not truly other people that are causing your mind to be discontent. It's your cravings, desires, attachments that's causing it. Okay, so this is right view. This is the first step of the Eightfold Path. Then the Buddha teaches right intention. It's not going to take me the same amount of time to teach this one as it did the first one. The first one, I need to take a lot of time and teach it to you. Right intention has three aspects to it. The Buddha says, in what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This, monks, is called right intention. So there's three aspects. The first one is renunciation. The intention of renunciation is the willingness. So you're not getting rid of false beliefs to adopt a new belief. No, that's not what you're doing. You're getting rid of these false beliefs so that you can bring in wisdom. You're bringing in the wisdom, and when you see the wisdom, like, oh my goodness, I've been believing that other people are causing me to be angry my whole life, but now I see the truth. I see the wisdom that I am causing my own discontentedness. It's craving, desire, attachment that's causing it. So now you get rid of your beliefs, but now you bring in wisdom. Sometimes people ask me all the time, David, do you believe this? Do you believe this? Do you believe that? Do you believe this? Nope, I don't believe anything. I know the truth. I know the truth because I've investigated it, right? So I know the truth that your mind is causing its own discontentedness, but you need to see that truth. But if you don't practice the intention of renunciation, you won't be able to see that truth because your mind's still holding on. So the first part of right intention is having the intention of renunciation, the willingness to let go. The second one is the intention of non-ill will. Non-ill will is a double negative. Non-ill will. So it's the same thing as saying goodwill, right? So goodwill is loving kindness. So you need to have the intention of goodwill, a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. You need to have the intention or the thinking or the thought. That's what the right intention means. The right thinking, the right thought, the right intention of goodwill towards all beings. That's what you need to cultivate in your mind. Right now, you may not have that, but you're going to need to cultivate that over time where you're disinterested in seeing other beings be injured or hurt or harmed in any way. And that comes into the second or the third one, which is the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Because as long as you're putting harm out, this harm is going to come back to you. So you need to cultivate the intention or the thinking or the thought of harmlessness, where you're disinterested in causing harm to other beings. Okay, so this is right intention. Renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness, where you're willing to have an open mind, you're willing to understand that what you currently believe is not true. Otherwise, you wouldn't be angry and frustrated and irritated. So that's an indication to you that you haven't cultivated full wisdom yet. So you're going to need to move certain things out. You're going to need to get rid of certain false beliefs, and you're bringing in this wisdom. Then you're going to need to cultivate the intention of goodwill or loving kindness, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And then you're going to need to cultivate the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. So this is right intention. Okay. Oops. And just to summarize these two steps, is right view is the Four Noble Truths, accepting responsibility for your own feelings, your intentions, your speech, and your actions. Accepting responsibility for what you're doing. Oftentimes we blame other people in the unenlightened state for what it is that you're feeling and what it is that you're doing. You might be blaming other people, but you need to accept responsibility for your own decisions. So the Four Noble Truths is explaining to you that your mind is causing its own discontentedness due to craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the clinging, wanting things to be a certain way. That's right view. Then right intention is to practice the intention of renunciation, willingness to let go of the unwholesomeness, the intention of non-ill will, which is goodwill, have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, and practice the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm. So any questions on any of this stuff here? Yes, ma'am. I will answer you, but no worries. It was a short question. I'll repeat it for you. The student asked, are Buddhist vegetarian? So everybody is at different places in their practice, and whether you choose to eat plant-based food or not is up to you. I would encourage you to consider that, because it's going to help you to experience improved results in your life. You'll hear me talk about this tomorrow when we talk about the 5 precepts, that when you're ingesting meat, you're ingesting the drugs, the hormones, the toxins that are in the flesh. You're ingesting that, and then it's also killing an animal. So it's wise to move to a plant-based food supply, but whether you choose to do that or not, it's your choice. Not everybody's doing the same thing, but I would encourage students to consider that, because it's going to produce better results for the body, and you're going to notice more health in the body. And I'll give you all the reasoning for that, but where people are in their practice is up to them, right? Not everybody's at the same place, and they may not be in the right time or ability to switch to plant-based food supply. So it's not about everybody doing things exactly the same. What you're going to hear is how by doing things like that, you're cultivating harmlessness. You're cultivating this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. You're eliminating hatred and ill will in the mind. But I'll give you more details on that tomorrow. All right. So what I'm going to do, I don't see any questions online either, is I'm going to take a break here. It's about 10:40. So let's take a 20-minute break, and we'll come back at 11 o'clock, and I'm going to pick it up with the rest of the Eightfold Path and guiding you guys in that. Okay, so enjoy your break, and I'll see you guys in 20 minutes. Okay, welcome back everyone. We'll go ahead and get started with the rest of the Eightfold Path, because what I've shared with you so far is the real foundation. As you can see, with right view and right intention, this makes up the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. This is what's now going to help you to be able to understand and practice all the rest of the Eightfold Path. Without right view and right intention, you wouldn't be able to practice all the rest of the Eightfold Path. So I'm going to describe all these other steps using the words of the Buddha, and we're going to be doing the same thing where you're learning, you're reflecting, and then you're understanding how to practice. So now we're moving into this moral conduct section, which is right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And Michael, this is where we'll talk about the livelihood that you kind of question you were asking a little bit earlier. Whenever you're learning about moral conduct related to the teachings of the Buddha, it's important that you don't think of them as rules or commandments, because that's not what he's actually doing. He's not teaching you rules and commandments. He's teaching you about this natural law of karma, this cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. He's helping you see what are the wise decisions that produce wholesome results in your life, and what are the unwise decisions that are producing unwholesome results in your life. As long as you don't understand this natural law of karma, you're going to lack that wisdom, and you're going to naturally make unwise decisions that are producing unwholesome results in your life. So when we move into this moral conduct section, it's not rules or commandments. He's not trying to tell you what to do or force you what to do. He's explaining to you this natural law that will help you to understand how to speak in ways that is harmless, how to have bodily actions that are harmless, how to have a livelihood that is harmless. So he's not teaching you any kind of rules or commandments. That's not the way a Buddha teaches. The Buddha is teaching the natural laws of existence. He's explaining to you what it took for him to get to this enlightened mental state, and then you're invited to learn, reflect, and practice that on your own if you like. So I'll show you what I mean by this. Here he's saying, "In what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech." So he's not telling you what to do. He's not giving you rules. He's just explaining to you the ways that you can harm people through your speech. And if you cause harm to others, this harm is going to come back to you. So if you're lying, for example, we've all done that growing up. We lie to a certain extent. You ask yourself, did it produce wholesome results for you, or did it produce unwholesome results? Well, when people discovered your lies, they found you to be undependable, they found you to be untrustworthy, and people didn't look to you for certain trustworthy decisions, or being responsible for certain jobs or occupation or certain projects at work. If you were lying in your personal professional relationships, this is going to hinder you from having wonderful relationships with the people around you. They're not going to trust you. And if you've ever done a lot of lying, then you realize that your mind was obsessively trying to figure out, what did you say to one person versus what did you say to this person? What did you say to that person? You got to keep your story straight. How could you ever get to a peaceful and joyful mind with you constantly lying in the world? Because you're going to have to constantly be figuring out what you said to one person versus another, and people are going to discover your lies. They're going to see you as being untrustworthy and undependable. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you to eliminate lying from your life, because it's going to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, like we were talking about in the right view. Because the reason why we typically lie is because we want something, and if we told the truth, we're not going to get what we want. And we want a particular thing, so we're lying in order to get that particular thing. So by you eliminating lying, you'll eliminate some of your cravings, desires, attachments, and you'll speak the truth. Then refraining from slander. This is like gossip or talk that degrades a person's reputation, or maybe an organization or a group of people. If you're slandering or gossiping about people, you're injuring their reputation, and now they're going to be interested in injuring you. They're going to come at you, right? People have been killed and murdered over this kinds of things. I'm not saying this is the way the world should be. The Buddha is explaining to you the way the world is, that because people have craving, desire, attachment, they have personal existence view in their mind. And if you're gossiping and slandering people, they're going to feel like you're injuring them, and now they're going to come at you. This is why you see some journalists in the world that do investigative journalism, they get murdered, because they're out there saying certain things that might be considered to be unwise. And I'm not saying whether they should or shouldn't be saying those things. Those are decisions for them to make. But this is the natural law of karma, that it's not about rules or commandments, the Buddha is showing you this cause and effect, this action and result, that when you're gossiping and slandering, at the very least, people are going to gossip and slander about you. If you've ever been in a group of people where you guys gossip and slandered people, when you turn your back, they're going to be gossiping and slandering about you. It's not only you that they're gossiping and slandering with, they're gossiping and slandering with other people too. So if you get used to that and you start circulating in groups of people that are gossiping and slandering, they're going to do the same thing to you when your back is turned. So at the very least, that's what you're going to experience. So it would be wise to clean up your practice where you're not gossiping or slandering about other people. Then there's harsh speech. Harsh speech is about your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. When you're harsh and hostile or aggressive with your speech, it's going to produce unwholesome results. All of this stuff is coming from craving, desire, attachment, including the slander and gossip, as well as the harsh speech. If you have a certain craving in your mind and you're thinking that somebody else is causing your painful feelings, you might be harsh and hostile and aggressive towards people. This is coming from your cravings. So what the Buddha teaches is to speak gentle. You might notice this if you've been in Thailand for any period of time. Thai people tend to speak quite gentle. They understand the natural law of karma to a certain degree, so they're speaking in a way with their tone, their tempo, and their word choice that is polite and kind and friendly and respectful. And this produces wholesome results in your life. So you're going to need to develop your practice where you're speaking gently with everybody around you. Right now, that might be challenging for you because you have certain cravings, you have certain attachments. When you talk to your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, your life partner, your children, you might find it difficult to be loving and kind in all those conversations. But the Buddha is going to give you more tools besides just this. Here, he's explaining to you the natural law to help you understand that it's unwise to speak harsh. But later, you're going to see the tools that he's going to provide you to help knock down your cravings even more, so that then you'll be able to speak more gently in the conversations that you're in. So none of these teachings is about learning it today and then instantly being able to do it today. You'll learn it today, but then it's a life practice. It's gradually dialing this in closer and closer. So certain relationships you're in, like when you guys talk to me, you're loving, you're kind, you're gentle, you're friendly, you're warm, you're polite, but you're probably not that way with everybody in your life. When you don't have attachment to your relationships, you'll be able to be more gentle in your speech. But when you have craving, desire, attachment, you'll find it to be more challenging to be gentle in all situations. So that's why you're learning to practice gentle speech, eliminating harsh speech, so you can eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. Because remember, in the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha explained that it's the Eightfold Path that's going to guide you to eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments. So that's why he's teaching you this here, because it's unwise to be harsh to others, because that harshness is going to come back to you. If you're bitter and harsh and hostile to your neighbors, your coworkers, your friends, your family, that's all going to come back to you. You're going to experience people being harsh and aggressive and hostile with you. But also, by learning to speak gentle in all situations, it's going to help you to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. Then there's refraining from frivolous speech. What this is like having a craving to talk. It's a kind of pointless, unbeneficial talk. It's like yada 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 yada. If you've ever done that, or someone else has ever done that around you, it's like, oh my goodness, when is this person going to stop talking? You know, you might be thinking that way. Well, if you did that, people are going to not look at you in a favorable way. And this is coming from your craving. Instead of having a conversation, you're broadcasting, right? And you're not interested in broadcasting. You're interested in having purposeful speech, beneficial speech, because then people will look at you in a way that they're looking to you for certain wisdom and certain influential things, certain beneficial speech, rather than just yada, 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 right? You're not interested in that. So we call this idle chatter or frivolous speech. And there's a certain craving there that's motivating that. So this is the Eightfold Path, what the Buddha teaches of right speech. But then remember, I shared how he has other teachings that integrate into the Eightfold Path. And this is one of those teachings around speech. It's called the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Here, he's giving you deeper teachings on speech. So if you have any issues with those first 4 of lying, slander, harsh speech, or frivolous speech, you're going to need to work on that. You're going to need to clean that up in all your different relationships. But then more deeply, you would like to practice the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. What it means to speak at the proper time, this is ensuring that you're not interrupting people when you're speaking, because when people interrupt you, you don't like that. So if you interrupted other people, this is going to cause problems in your relationships. The other part of speaking at the proper time is making sure your mind is ready to talk. If you're angry, if you're agitated, if you're annoyed, that's all that's going to come out. You're going to damage your relationships in that situation. You've done that before. We've all done that, right? Where your mind was angry or irritated or annoyed and you started speaking and you made the situation worse. So the Buddha teaches you to speak at the proper time, which is when your mind's calm and when it's peaceful, then you're able to speak in a level-headed way. And then the third aspect of speaking in the proper time is making sure it's the proper time for the other person, right? If you got a notice in the mail that you haven't paid your rent and you guys are going to get kicked out in 3 days, and now your life partner comes home or your roommate comes home and you jump on them right away as soon as they walk in the door from work, that's not the proper time to talk, right? Let them come in, put their bags down, get some water, get some food, relax a little bit. Hey, is this a good time to talk about something important? They're like, sure, what do you have to say? Oh, I got this notice in the mail and we should probably pay our rent. I think we forgot this month. Right now you can handle it in a nice, calm, leveled way. But they may say, no, it's not a good time to talk. I had a really hectic day at work. Can we talk about this another time? Well, if you don't have craving, you should be able to say, sure, we can talk about this tomorrow, right? Because tonight you're not going to really solve anything anyway. You got 3 days. You can handle it tomorrow. Right? So if you don't have craving to talk, you should be able to postpone your conversation and talk at another time. So you always are interested in making sure that you're not interrupting, that your mind is prepared to talk, that you're not angry or bitter or hostile or otherwise discontent, and that the other person's mind is ready to talk. This is speaking at the proper time. And this is a prerequisite for any conversation, because if you're speaking at the wrong time, the conversation isn't going to go very well. And then the second factor is speaking the truth, because you're interested in being a truth speaker, dependable, reliable, one to be relied on. These are the words of the Buddha. He teaches this in other parts of his teachings, because if you lie, your mind's going to be obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person or the other. People are going to discover those lies. It's going to damage your personal and professional relationships. Then the third factor is speaking gently. That's your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. And with English, you need to be very attentive to that. In the Thai language, we have all kinds of words that ensure people know we're being polite. At the end of each phrase, you say ka or kap, depending if you're male or female, and people know you're being polite. And they even have other words like kapom or nakap, things like this. But in the English language, we don't have so many of those things. But we used to. We used to say sir and ma'am in the old days. Right? We can do that now. Even though people around us aren't necessarily doing that, we can refer to each other as sir and ma'am to show that, hey, we're being polite, we're being kind, we're being friendly, we're being warm, we're being gentle. So you're going to need to pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice, developing your practice more and more to speak gently. The fourth aspect is beneficially. This is purposeful speech. This is eliminating that idle chatter, that frivolous speech. It's not necessarily always about the topic that you're saying. It's about how you're speaking, right? Because when you meet somebody, you might say, hi, how are you? Where are you from? What's your name? How old are you? This is purposeful, right? This is beneficial because you're getting to know this person, right? What unpurposeful or unbeneficial speech is that idle chatter, yada, 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 the frivolous speech. And then the fifth factor is speaking with a mind of loving kindness, right? This is the opposite of loving kindness would be inner hate, right? So you would like to speak with that genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. So these are the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, which is a deeper teaching beyond the right speech of the Eightfold Path. And you can reflect on this and independently verify that it's true. Because take a conversation that didn't go so well in your life. I'm sure you've had some, right? You've probably had more than some, right? Look at those conversations. Either you and or the other person missed one of these. And you might have missed more than one of them. You were maybe talking at the wrong time. What you said wasn't true. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't beneficial. And it wasn't with a mind of loving kindness. And the conversation erupted, right? Even you just miss one of these, there's the potential for the conversation to go in an unwholesome direction. But then also look at conversations that went well in your life. Even though you didn't know these 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you've been practicing them without actually consciously realizing it. Conversations that go really well in your life, you were practicing all 5 of these. So in the past, you didn't know these 5 factors and you were unconsciously practicing them. But now what you would like to do is intentionally practice these with right intention. You would like to intentionally and consciously practice all 5 factors. And where you can't practice all 5 factors, don't speak, right? The Buddha didn't teach this, but Grandma did. She said, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. Did your grandma teach you that? Right? If you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all, right? You can follow that, right? So here the Buddha is giving you the detail, which is going to really help you, but you can also follow Grandma's advice too, because she was teaching right speech as well. Okay, so what the Buddha is teaching you here is something in Thai we call barami. This is a Thai word. What barami is the one who people listen to. In each Thai village, there's usually people who have barami, the one who people listen to. People know that these villagers are very successful in life. And we're not talking about financial success. We're talking about relationships, that they're successful in their relationships. And the villagers know if you have some issue, go talk to them because they have barami. They're the ones who people listen to. So if you speak this way, regularly in all your relationships, you will establish barami. You'll be the one who people listen to. In your family, in your work environment, in your neighborhood, people will look to you as one who people listen to because they know that you're speaking in wise ways and you're speaking in a way that's harmless. They don't know the natural laws of existence, but when you're practicing based on the natural laws of existence, they will feel it. They will know. They will see that this person's speaking in a wise way, and you'll develop wonderful relationships, and you'll develop barami, not in 1 week, not in 1 month, but after a year or 2 or 3, more and more, you'll establish barami in your community where you'll be the one who people listen to. And it's nice to be able to be influential in your family and in your work environment. You can help people if you're speaking in wise ways. But if you're not speaking in wise ways, people aren't going to listen to you. You're not going to be the one who people listen to. So you can establish barami, which is what the Thai people understand. They understand that, but also you can understand it for your life as well. So this is right speech. And in the book, Volume 1, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, in Chapter 5, I go through and talk about speech in detail. I take each one of these factors and I give you all kinds of examples for you to learn and understand how to practice this. If you are kind of at a loss and you don't really remember, eventually you need to build up to the point where you remember all these 5 factors and you're practicing them. But if you're ever at a loss, remember to speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. This can be kind of a guiding light for you. If you're speaking polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, this can really help. But it's the Buddha's words that are going to really give you the detail that you need. So you're going to need to dial that in closer and closer. And you can look to the book because there's a lot of detail in speech, because we can harm extensively through our speech. We can harm and damage our relationships. You guys know that because you've done that before. And during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was called right speech because that's all they had was speech. But if I was you, I would think about this as right communication, because we have many ways of communicating nowadays, not just speech. We have emails, text messages, social media, all different kinds of ways of communicating. So if you went into a job interview and you used right speech and the employer absolutely adores you and is interested in hiring you, but if they looked at your social media and you were aggressive and harsh and bitter, you probably aren't going to get the job. So you would like all your communication to be using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. So if you're angry and hostile and you sit down to write out that email and you're pounding on the keyboard, that's not the right time, right? Just save it as a draft. Don't send it. Come back a couple hours later, a couple days later, and see if it's still wise for you to send that email, right? So you're going to need to practice right communication, where your text messages, your voice messages, your phone calls, your interactions with people, your social media, everything's using right speech. This is what's going to help you to establish barami in all your different relationships. Then we have right action. These are the words of the Buddha. He says, in what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. So he's giving 3 major bodily actions that can cause harm if you chose to cause harm through your bodily actions: killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. He's not giving you an exhaustive list, because notice he doesn't say don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face. But if you understand right action, what he's essentially teaching you is don't cause harm through your bodily actions. So you would know it would be unwise to walk up to someone and punch them in the face, because they're probably going to punch you back, or maybe they have a knife or a gun, or maybe their friends or their family come and attack you. It's very unwise to cause harm through your bodily actions. So he's giving you 3 major bodily actions here, but then you need to apply it in all other aspects of your life. Even if you were walking through the airplane and you were dragging your suitcase behind you and you're running over people's feet and bumping into their knees with your suitcase, that's wrong action. You're damaging or causing injury through your bodily actions. And I guarantee you, someone's going to get hostile and bitter, and you're going to have a problem on that plane. But if you function in a way where you're practicing right action, you're not causing harm through your bodily actions. So therefore, harm isn't going to come back to you. So these are just 3 major ones that the Buddha is teaching. And he goes into more detail with these in other parts of his teachings. But you'll need to apply this to all aspects of your bodily actions as you're walking about the world, that you're not causing harm through your bodily actions. We're going to go into detail on these tomorrow when I talk about the 5 precepts. But I would like to just give you a heads up about sexual misconduct, because sometimes when people see that, they kind of assume that it's going to say one thing or the other. But when you look at the teachings of the Buddha, he gives a lot of detail about sexual misconduct, that he explains having sex with minors, having sex without consent, going outside your relationships, and things like this. Sexual activity that causes harm. It's important to understand that he never taught that same-gender relationships are harmful, because 2 loving, loyal, consenting adults choosing to have sex, they're not causing harm to anybody. So 2,500 years ago, he understood that a man and a female choosing to have sex together, they're not causing harm. They're loyal, loving, consenting adults. 2 men or 2 women choosing to have sex, they're not causing harm to each other or to anyone else. They're in a loyal, loving, consenting relationship. So here, I will explore this for you more tomorrow when we talk about the 5 precepts, but I'd like to just give you a heads up that this doesn't include same-gender relationships, because there's no harm that those individuals are causing. If you are someone who prefers same-gender relationship, or someone else that you know, they're not causing harm if they're in a loyal, loving, consenting relationship, and that's why harm isn't going to come back to you based on that. So this is right action. And there's others that the Buddha teaches too. He teaches things like substances that cause heedlessness. He talks about gambling, because all of this is based in craving. If you're interested in eliminating craving, desire, attachment, where the mind is longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way, which is causing that frustration, agitation, or annoyance, if you base your decisions in craving, it's going to produce unwholesome results. So if I was gambling, using my money and my income to gamble, I'm going to have a certain craving for more money, more money, more money, more money, more money. And now when I lose my money, I can't pay for my food. I can't pay for my shelter. I can't pay for water and all the things that I need in order to sustain my life. So he teaches you that it would be unwise to gamble. Remember, not as a rule. He's not giving you any rules or commandments. He's showing you this natural law of karma, of cause and effect, so that with your wisdom of this natural law, you'll naturally make wiser decisions about your life. And then when you have that wisdom, you'll experience these wholesome results coming back to you, because you're making wiser and wiser decisions. And as long as you lack wisdom, you'll make unwise decisions that produce unwholesome results in your life. So he gives you all these different details, but he doesn't give you an exhaustive list of all the bodily actions that could cause harm. That's where you've got to figure this out for yourself. If you've ever noticed being around Thai people when they're walking through a crowd, they'll kind of like hold their clothing even against their body, because they're not even interested in their loose clothing kind of hitting up against somebody. They'll very intentionally walk through a crowd, being very observant of their body, ensuring that they're not bumping into people. But of course, you're going to occasionally step on someone's foot, or you're going to bump into their shoulder or something, and you just apologize to clean that up, right? You just say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am," or "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to step on your foot. I apologize." right? And then you clean that up. Whereas if you were just haphazardly walking through the world, not caring who you're bumping into, this is going to produce difficult experiences and situations, because now you're causing harm through your bodily actions, and this harm is going to come back to you. So this is the right action of the Eightfold Path. And now we come to right livelihood. Right livelihood is all about how you choose to sustain your life in the world. The Buddha teaches you to not cause harm through the way that you sustain your life. That's what a livelihood is. So here in the Eightfold Path, he says, in what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood. So he speaks just generally and broadly in the Eightfold Path, because he has other teachings, and he's pointing to those other teachings. Remember, the Eightfold Path is kind of this central teaching that everything else integrates into. So you'll find sometimes in the Eightfold Path where he's just pointing to another teaching, and then you go investigate that teaching and you see what he's talking about with right livelihood. So there's two folds of purification with your livelihood. I'm going to teach you the first fold of purification here to help you get to a point with your livelihood where you're not causing harm. So here, this first teaching on right livelihood, he teaches 5 businesses that if you performed any of these, it would be causing harm in the world, and therefore harm's going to come back to you. And remember, you're not believing his teachings. You're learning, you're reflecting, and you're practicing. So here he's saying business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. He's saying it's unwise to have a livelihood where you're sustaining your life off of causing harm to other beings. So you could take these and you could independently reflect on them based on situations that you've seen in the news or the people around you, and you can independently verify that what he's teaching you is true. So let's just take one of these. Let's take the substances that cause heedlessness, right? So if I was standing on the street corner selling crystal methamphetamine or cocaine or some other illicit drug like heroin or something, I'm causing harm to the community. I'm putting this substance into the community, and now people are going out robbing in order to give me money. People are going out stealing in order to give me money because they're addicted to this substance that I'm providing, right? And now, because of me causing harm in the community, harm is going to come to me. I'm very likely to get beat up. I'm very likely to get murdered. I might get robbed. Somebody might come and rob me. At the very least, I'm going to get arrested probably at some point. I might even get addicted to my own substance, right? This is all harm that's coming to me as a result of me causing harm. But this natural law of karma, it's a law that's functioning at a much higher level. In most places in the world, it's illegal to stand on the street corner and sell cocaine and heroin and crystal meth. But the Buddha is talking about all substances that cause heedlessness, because this natural law of karma is functioning at a much higher level than the human laws, right? So if I worked at a liquor store, for example, and I was selling whiskey and alcoholic products, my government might say, yeah, you can go be a cashier at that liquor store. We're not going to arrest you. Go for it. Well, this is a human law. Human laws are imperfect. They can't be created and administered and enforced equally. So they're not perfect, they're imperfect. But the natural law of karma is functioning at all times, and it's functioning perfectly. If I went and became a cashier at a liquor store, it would be a very unwise decision for me, because liquor stores are very likely to get robbed. So I could get beat up, I could get robbed, I could get murdered at this liquor store. At the very least, I'm going to be dealing with people who are sometimes intoxicated, and I'm going to have to deal with this clientele coming in. If not only I'm working at a liquor store or if I'm a bartender or doing any kind of things with substances that cause heedlessness. So what the Buddha is teaching you about the natural law of karma is a much higher level of law than the human laws that we create. If you're practicing the natural law of karma, you'll never have problems with your government, because you're practicing a much higher law than what the government is actually teaching and practicing. So here you can independently verify every single one of these through walking through your life, and you can see how it's causing harm, and then harm is going to come back to you. Then the Buddha gives guidance on how you perform your livelihood. He talks about scheming, flattery, hinting, belittling, pursuing gain with gain. That this is how you perform your livelihood, that if you performed your livelihood in this way, it's going to cause harm, so therefore harm is going to come back to you. So let's say, for example, I'm a politician or a police officer. That's not one of those 5 livelihoods that the Buddha was talking about previously. But let's just say I was scheming, which means corruption. Say I was a corrupt politician. And say 10 years, 15 years into my career, nobody ever found out. But now, 15 years into my career, they found out that I'm corrupt. And now I'm going to have a difficult time with the legal system. I'm also going to have a difficult time getting reelected, which means I based my career on being a politician. And now that I was corrupt and I was scheming, now I'm going to find it very difficult to sustain my life because I've now caused difficult or issues in the community through scheming and corruption, and people aren't going to be interested in reelecting me, right? So scheming in your career is going to cause you difficulties if you have corruption. Or flattery. What this is insincere comments just to get people to like buy things from you, right? If you had customers or business partners or things like this, that you were just flattering them with insincere comments in order to get them to do business with you, you're not going to have a very good experience in this situation because your customers and your business partners, they're going to see through that. And when they see through that you're having these insincere comments, they're going to be disinterested in doing business with you any longer. So the Buddha teaches that it would be unwise to do that. What hinting is like not being clear and direct about the work that you're doing. Say I was on a project team, and this project team, we're supposed to be doing certain assignment, and now we have to go talk to the boss and tell the boss what we've done. Well, if I was hinting, I might be like, well, I was very diligent in my work, and I did what I was supposed to do, but I'm not sure about Barbara. I have no idea what she was working on all week long. Right? This is kind of like hinting. We call it like beating around the bush, where instead I could just say, hey boss, here's what I was able to accomplish this week. Here's the project that I was able to work on. Boom. Right? Just be clear and direct. No need to like hint or beat around the bush or be unclear. Like if you're in a job or occupation, if you're talking to your customers, you would like to be very clear and very direct about the things that you're talking about, because then they can see that you know what you're doing, and they'll be more likely to interact with you, and you'll be very successful in your livelihood. Then there's belittling. This is like being degrading or diminishing to your coworkers, to your customers, about your competition. Sometimes people feel like you need to be degrading and diminishing about your competition. This is belittling other people. People are going to see through that, and they're going to be disinterested in connecting with you as a certain business person. So if you're belittling your competition, your coworkers, your colleagues, this is going to harm you in your livelihood because you're causing harm through the way you interact at your livelihood. What pursuing gain with gain is, this is like just taking a job for profit. If you were just going to a job to pick up a paycheck and that's all you cared about, or if you were selling a product that you didn't really care about, you're just trying to make money from it, you're not going to feel motivated. You're not going to feel encouraged. You're not going to feel enthused about the work that you're doing. So if you're pursuing gain with gain, you're just out for the money and that's it. But what you would like to do is you'd like to have a livelihood that you have motivation, that you have encouragement, that you have enthusiasm to do. Whereas if you're just showing up for a paycheck each day, you're going to drag yourself to work every day, right? For 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day, you're just going to have to drag yourself to work, and you're going to feel miserable. How are you going to get to a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life, which is the enlightened mind, if you despise the work that you're doing? So you would like to ensure you have enthusiasm and motivation and encouragement about the work that you're doing, that you're not just doing it for money, because that's going to wear off. If you're doing any kind of work for money, it's going to eventually wear off, and you're not going to enjoy the work that you're doing. So if you've ever had a job like that, you probably despised going to work. When your alarm went off in the morning, you were like, oh my gosh, one more day of work. Why do I have to go to this place? Well, because that's the job you selected. This is all about your life, your decisions, and your results. So if you select a job that you're enthused about, you're motivated about, eventually you'll get to the point where it doesn't even feel like work anymore, right? People say, David, are you going to the temple to work? No, I'm going here to have fun. I'm coming here to share teachings with you that are going to help you, because I thoroughly enjoy what I do. So I don't feel like I'm working. Other people might think I'm working. Sure, I'm expending a certain amount of energy and effort to share these teachings with you. So from that standpoint, someone might say I'm working, but I'm not dragging myself to work. That's not what I'm doing. Sometimes when I come here in rainy season, it's pouring down raining, and I'm on my motorbike on the way here, pouring down raining with a big smile on my face. Wow, it's going to be wonderful to get to the temple and share these teachings with everybody, because I know it's going to help your life, right? So you can get to a point in your livelihood where you're thoroughly enthused and motivated and encouraged about the work that you're doing, to the point where you would do it for free if you could. Of course, you can't, right? You need to collect some kind of income to sustain your life, but that's not the reason why you're doing that work. You're not doing the work for the money. That's just kind of a byproduct of you doing something you really enjoy, something that you thoroughly enjoy, maybe helping people in some way or another. And you just collect this paycheck as a way to sustain your life. And that's kind of a byproduct of doing something you thoroughly enjoy. So that's what you would like to get to with your livelihood, is that it doesn't even feel like work anymore. You just thoroughly enjoy what you're doing. Okay. And that's purifying your livelihood. So the three aspects of moral conduct is right speech, where you're not causing harm through all your verbal conduct. But remember, this is all communication. Verbal, text, chat, post, emails should all be harmless, using those 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Speaking at the right time, what you say is true, speaking gentle, speaking beneficially, and speaking with a mind of loving kindness. And with that wisdom of consciously making the choice to have conversations in that way, you'll see that your relationships will really blossom. They'll really improve because you're not causing harm through your communication. And then there's right action, which is not causing harm through your bodily actions or your bodily conduct, that you're practicing harmlessness with your bodily movements. Then your livelihood, you would like to sustain your life in a way that doesn't cause harm to others. And the Buddha is giving you the guidance of the natural law of karma to be able to see that truth for yourself. So any questions on the moral conduct section? Any questions? Anybody online? If you guys have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So we're going to move on to the mental discipline section. This is where you're learning how to control your mind. Okay, all of this stuff is helping to build you up so that then the Buddha is going to now teach you in the Eightfold Path right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, so you understand how to control your mind, training your mind, and so it can be disciplined. Because when your mind's sad and angry and frustrated and irritated, all those discontent feelings, you don't have control over your mind. You don't have discipline of your mind. So now he's going to teach you how to discipline your mind so you can control your mind in all situations. These are the words of the Buddha on right effort. I'm going to read it to you, but then I'm going to break it down for you and show you what he's talking about and how to practice it. He says, in what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort. So here he's talking about 4 things that you're going to have to apply effort to accomplish. And here I've broken it down for you so you can see what those are. The first one, he's talking about prevent unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind. So there are certain unwholesome things that are currently not in your mind. And the Buddha is saying apply the effort to prevent them from ever coming into the mind. An example of that might be that you're not interested in killing another human being. It's the farthest thing from your mind right now. You have no interest in killing another human being. It's not in your mind. And the Buddha is saying apply the effort to prevent that from ever coming into the mind. And there's other things that are currently not in your mind right now that are unwholesome. And the Buddha is saying apply the effort to prevent those from ever coming into the mind. Then number 2, Abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. So there are certain unwholesome things that are currently in your mind. And the Buddha is saying, apply the effort to eliminate them out of the mind. Some examples might be, if somebody's in a relationship now and they have a craving to have sex outside of that relationship, you know that's going to cause harm in your relationships. This is why you get sexually transmitted diseases. This is why people get injured and fights and beat up and murdered when they go outside of a relationship. This is the natural law of karma at play. It's all happening whether you're aware of it or not. So if you know that this is an unwholesome thing and this is arising in your mind, having the craving to go outside your relationship, the Buddha is saying apply the effort to eliminate that from your mind. Get it out of your mind because it's unwholesome. Or say you have anger, frustration, irritation that are rising in your mind. The Buddha is saying apply the effort to eliminate that from your mind. That's how you purify the mind of discontent feelings, is that as they're arising, you got to cut them off and let them go by applying the right effort. So this is the first two. Preventing unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising, and abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen. Now the third one is produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. So there are certain wholesome mental states that you're going to learn about on the path to enlightenment that are not currently in your mind. And the Buddha is saying apply the effort to bring those into the mind. You're going to need to cultivate those in the mind, bring them in. Then the examples that I'm giving here is something like generosity. You might not be very generous. You might be kind of selfish and kind of hold on to things. Maybe your time, your effort, your energy, your resources. Maybe you find it difficult to share with other people. Well, you're going to learn that generosity is a wholesome quality that you're going to need to practice in order to let go of craving, desire, attachment. You're going to need to train your mind to let go. And when you're giving and you're sharing without any expectation of anything in return, this is going to help your mind to let go and eliminate its craving, desire, attachment. So if you know that this generosity is not currently in your mind, you're going to need to bring that into the mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to cultivate that generosity. Compassion is another example. Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. Let's just say you're not compassionate. Say when you see somebody suffering and they're having an unfortunate circumstance, you're like, so what? I don't care. That's their karma. Who cares? Right? This is like indifference. Well, if that's the way your mind is, you don't have compassion. So you're going to need to apply the effort to bring that compassion into the mind where you have concern for the misfortune of others. Okay, so that's what it means to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. Any wholesome mental states that are not currently in your mind, you're bringing those into the mind by applying the effort. And you're going to learn about all the various wholesome and unwholesome mental states that the Buddha teaches. So you're going to need to either eliminate them or you're going to need to bring in certain wholesome mental states. Then the fourth one here is maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away, and work to increase their growth in the mind. This is any wholesome mental states that you currently have in the mind. The Buddha is saying support those, encourage those, don't allow them to fade, bring them to full growth and full perfection. So for example, loving kindness. Loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is the opposite of anger or hatred. You probably have some loving kindness in your mind. You have an interest in seeing other beings be well, but it hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection because there's some people in your life that you probably hate, or you have dislike towards, or you're angry, or you're irritated with them because your loving kindness hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection where you have love and kindness for all beings in the world. So you're going to need to apply the effort to arise this loving kindness and bring it into the mind more and more and support it and encourage it. Don't allow it to fade. Bring it to full growth and full perfection. And then sympathetic joy. This is like joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. This is the opposite of jealousy or envy, right? Because if you're walking around jealous or envious, this is because of your cravings, desires, attachments. You see somebody else has something fortunate happen for them, and you want that for yourself. You can't be joyful for their success, right? So if you're noticing that you do have joy for people's success in some situations, but in other situations, you're kind of jealous and you're kind of envious, that's because your sympathetic joy hasn't been brought to full growth and full development. So you're going to need to apply the effort through right effort to support that, encourage it, don't allow it to fade, bring it to full growth and perfection. So this is what right effort is, applying the effort to eliminate the unwholesome and bring in the wholesome. Okay, so this is the 6th step of the Eightfold Path. Now we have right mindfulness. This is the 7th step. You wouldn't be able to practice right effort without right mindfulness. You're going to need right mindfulness. These are all working together. So I'm going to read it and then I'll explain to you what it is. In what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness. So here what he's talking about is the 4 foundations of mindfulness: bodily sensations, feelings, condition of the mind, and the mental objects, which I'm going to explain to you. But before I do, when you're first starting to learn about right mindfulness, you might just think about it as awareness of mind. And that might be a good place for you to start. Because in the unenlightened state, we typically aren't aware what's going on in the mind. We're usually just plowing through the forest, knocking down the trees, burning up the forest. We look behind us and we see a path of destruction. And we're like, who knocked down the trees? Who lit the fire? I smell smoke. Well, you're the one who's doing that, right? We didn't have mindfulness, so we're just plowing through the forest, knocking down the trees and burning up the forest. We're not aware of what's going on in our own mind. We're not aware that there's even anger and frustration there, right? We're just kind of plowing through the world. So what you would like to do when you're first starting to cultivate this is cultivate awareness of mind, just some general awareness of the mind, where you're starting to be aware. Are you bored? Are you lonely? Are you frustrated? Are you agitated? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you excited? Are you feeling peaceful and joyful? What's kind of the general awareness that you have of the mind? And you'd like to cultivate this throughout your day, so you're generally aware of what's going on in your mind. But then, as you develop your practice more and more, you would like to develop what's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is where you're gaining awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. What the bodily sensations are, the Buddha is alerting you to something that's happening. When you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, where you're longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way, and if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation. And if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, or others. Before your mind gets that conditioned feeling, there's going to be some bodily sensation. So for example, when you get angry or frustrated, when the mind gets angry or frustrated, there's something that's happening before your mind gets angry or frustrated. You may or may not be aware of it right now. There's a bodily sensation. You might notice tingling in the body. You might notice tightening in the chest. You might notice pain in your heart. You might notice tightening in your throat. You might notice heat in your face. You might notice pressure in your skull. You guys know what I'm talking about? Have you experienced this? Right? When you're noticing the anger arising, there's going to be some bodily sensation first. Then, if you don't take care of it there, if you don't do what you need to do, which is apply right effort and cut it off and let it go, it's going to then become a feeling. Now your mind's angry. The feeling just entered into the mind. Or now you're frustrated, or now you're agitated. And you can cut it off and let it go there too. But then if you don't cut it off there, it's going to affect the condition of your mind. Have you ever been angry for a few hours or a few days? Have you ever been agitated for a week or two when something happened long ago, like a week or two ago, and you're still agitated? Of course you have, right? Everybody has at some point, right? So this is the condition of the mind, that it's generally agitated for a few hours, a few days, or for a week or so. And then what happens is it feeds the mental object. What a mental object is a deeply rooted container in the mind. In this example, it's ill will, that the mind is getting fed this deeply rooted container of ill will. And now the mind has this container of ill will. Like right now, you're not angry, you're not frustrated, you're just sitting here listening to me talk. But you've got this mental object of ill will in there. It's only a matter of time before somebody does something that you disagree with, and now your anger arises because of this mental object of ill will, this deeply rooted container that's in there. So you're going to need to develop awareness of all four of these things, that you can be aware of the bodily sensations prior to the mind becoming discontent. Then the mind experiences the feeling. Then it affects the condition of the mind. And then it feeds these mental objects, because the Buddha is alerting you to what's called the early warning system. I call it the early warning system. There's this early warning system that you get to indicate that you're about to become angry or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. Even those conditioned pleasant feelings, happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria, there's going to be some bodily sensation prior to your mind getting a conditioned feeling. Because remember, those conditioned feelings, that's the problem. That as long as your mind's forming a conditioned feeling, it's going to keep being shaken up. Because when you get what you want, you get that conditioned pleasant feeling, you get happy. But then it's only a matter of time before that condition changes, and now you end up in the sadness or the frustration. So if you continue to allow your mind to get conditioned feelings, your mind's going to keep going up and down and up and down. So what the Buddha is teaching you is to be aware of the bodily sensations that are occurring before you get a conditioned feeling, because now you can take action. When you're noticing the bodily sensations, you can cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation. And now you've just saved your mind needing to get angry. You don't need to get angry. You can train your mind to the point where you can cut it off before you ever get angry. This isn't suppressing your feelings. Sometimes people think when I describe this that you're suppressing your feelings. You're actually cutting it off before it even becomes a feeling. You're cutting it off as a bodily sensation. It's kind of like this. If you were taking a boat from Canada to the UK, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water gets into the boat, you got a real problem to deal with. You got to get this water out. So once the anger comes into your mind, you've got a real problem to deal with. You got to get it out. But if you can prevent it from ever coming into the mind by cutting it off as a bodily sensation, you've just protected your mind. You've saved your mind, that your mind doesn't actually get angry. So when the mind's getting ready to get a conditioned feeling, you're like, nope, not going to let you do that. Because you notice the bodily sensations in the body, the mind's about to get a conditioned feeling, and you say, nope, I'm not going to let you do that. You apply right effort. You cut it off and let it go, right? So over time, if you do this more and more, you'll eventually get to the point where there are no conditioned feelings, that you don't even notice the arising of anything because you've purified the mind. Right now, you're going to have the arising of bodily sensations, and you're going to have the conditioned feelings. You're going to have the condition of the mind and these mental objects because your mind's not purified. It's not fully trained. But this is the process of getting your mind to be fully trained, that when you notice the bodily sensations occurring, you cut it off and let it go. And you may not be aware of those bodily sensations right now because your mindfulness isn't yet fully developed. Or your craving, desire, attachments might be so strong and so deeply held that you go from 0 to 100 miles an hour in the blink of an eye, and you don't even notice the bodily sensations. This is like road rage, right? If somebody's like road raging, they go from 0 to 100 in the blink of an eye. They don't even notice the bodily sensations. They're not even aware that they exist. So the Buddha is alerting you to what your body's doing and what the mind's doing so that now you can take action to fix it. So there's these bodily sensations that you're going to need to develop awareness of, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. This is called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. But where you might just start is just getting general awareness of the mind. Because generally in the unenlightened state, individuals don't even have that. So you're going to need to just start with that, and then slowly but surely, you'll be able to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And the way that you do this is through right concentration. This is how you develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Here, the Buddha is describing what's referred to as the jhanas. The jhanas are preliminary phases that the mind goes through before it gets to the first stage of enlightenment. There are certain phases that the mind experiences. When you're putting together the Eightfold Path really well, you will then start experiencing the jhanas. It's kind of like a light bulb is flickering, and it's kind of giving you an indication that the condition of your mind's improving, because you're starting to notice these enhanced qualities of mind that the Buddha is describing. I'm not going to read this here because the Buddha here is describing the results of having practiced all of the Eightfold Path, that you're going to start experiencing these jhanas. There's other teachings where he explains what right concentration is and how to practice it. So that's what I'm going to teach you, is how to practice right concentration, what it is and how to practice it. But at later time in your development, you'll need to learn about these jhanas, because they're indications for you that you're putting together the Eightfold Path really well. And this is what I teach in some other programs and other courses of what these jhanas are, so that you can know what they are and you can know that you're putting the path together really well, because you're going to notice these enhanced qualities. Okay, so now let me show you what right concentration is and how to practice it. So what right concentration is to practice developing a meditation practice and to practice singleness of mind in daily life. Your meditation practice consists of two primary meditations: breathing mindfulness meditation, which is what I've been teaching you guys in this course, and I'm going to teach you this afternoon in detail after lunch, and then loving kindness meditation. What breathing mindfulness meditation is this is where you're focused on the breath. Whenever the mind moves off the breath, you cut it off and let it go, and you bring the mind back to the breath. The reason why you're doing this is you're developing mindfulness, where you can be aware of the mind. When you're focused on the breath, you're developing awareness of the mind. And when the mind moves off the breath, you're cutting that off and letting it go. So while your mind's focused on the breath, you're developing awareness of mind, which is a wholesome quality, and you're developing concentration, the ability to focus on a single object. And then when the mind moves off the breath, you're training the mind to let go, let go, let go. Because with craving, desire, attachment in the mind, which we were talking about in right view, your mind's not going to want to let go. It's going to be holding on and holding on and holding on. So the meditation of breathing mindfulness meditation, the goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Sometimes that's what people think, because you're cutting things off and letting it go. Your goal is to train the mind to develop mindfulness or awareness of mind, to develop concentration where you can have focus and clarity on a single object, and you can easily let go. So if 20, 30, 50 times during your meditation, you're having to let go and let go and let go and let go, this is really healthy for your mind. Because when you have craving, desire, attachment, you're going to want things to be a certain way, and you're going to hold on to those things. And if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. But because of impermanence, you can't always get what you want. So you're going to get painful feelings sometimes. So if you can train your mind to let go, and you don't crave for things to be a certain way, where you're not longing and yearning for those things, then you can be peaceful and joyful at all times. But it's going to take you time to gradually train your mind this way. So breathing mindfulness meditation is being done in order to train your mind to let go. So in meditation, we're training in one way, where we're training the mind to let go of anything and everything that comes up. But in daily life, you're training your mind to let go of the unwholesome qualities. That's your right effort. So you're practicing meditation, which is right concentration, to develop right mindfulness, so that then you can apply right effort in daily life. So when you're going out and about and you're noticing the bodily sensations associated with anger arising, you cut it off and let it go. And you protect the mind, you preserve the mind. You don't get angry, you don't get frustrated. But because your mind is just getting started on the training, you are going to get angry. You are going to get frustrated. From this point forward, you are going to get angry and frustrated because your mind's unenlightened. But more and more, you cut it back and cut it back and cut it back and cut it back. It's kind of like a wild bush. You keep cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back, and eventually you uproot the craving out of the mind. Just like when you cut a weed back, it'll eventually regrow. But if you cut it all the way back and you uproot it out of the ground, it's not going to grow back. It's not going to come back. So if you can uproot these cravings out of the mind, you won't get angry and frustrated any longer. But that's going to take time. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So your breathing mindfulness meditation is there to develop meditation on mindfulness and to develop your awareness of mind, to develop your concentration and the ability to easily let go so you can eliminate cravings, desires, attachments. Then you're developing loving kindness meditation. This is to train the mind to eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will and cultivate the loving kindness. You're going to understand this a little bit more tomorrow when we talk about the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots. This is a meditation that's going to rewire your mind so that you no longer experience anger and frustration. And it's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Then there's these 2 other specialized meditations that are used on an as-needed basis. There's one to eliminate sexual cravings if you have difficulties with that. And there's one to help you realize non-self. Not everybody needs these 2, but everyone's going to need breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. But there's these other 2 that the Buddha taught in order to help you with those particular challenges, but not everybody needs them. So I teach those at different times, and I'll kind of introduce it to you this afternoon when we're talking about breathing mindfulness meditation. What you would like to do is develop a meditation practice of 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. And that's going to take you some time. Some students take 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to that, because you need to gradually improve. Right now, there's probably some unbeneficial things in your life that you're doing that you need to clear out of your life. And when you clear those things out, you actually have more time to do things like meditation. But wherever you start is where you start. If you start once a day for 5 minutes, okay, perfect. That's where you start, but gradually expand it. Or if you start twice for 10 minutes, okay, great. That's where you're at. Gradually expand it. What you'll notice is frequency is more important than duration. So if it's a matter of 1 session for 30 minutes per day, or if it's 2 sessions for 15 minutes per session, go for the 2 for 15. That's going to be more impactful to your mind than the 1 for 30 minutes. So I'm going to teach you about that this afternoon, about how to build up your meditation practice. Then the second aspect of right concentration is practicing singleness of mind in daily life. This is where you're doing just one thing at a time. If you've been taught to multitask, your mind actually can't multitask. It's not possible for you to do more than one thing at a time. What you're actually doing is you're doing one thing for like 3 to 5 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to something else. And now you're doing that for 8 seconds or 10 seconds. And now you're rapidly cycling to something else, and you're doing that for 3 to 5 seconds. And when you get home, you feel very stressed, and you have anxiety, and you have difficulty relaxing because your mind is overactive and is jumping around from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. All day long, your mind's doing this. Where the idea of multitasking came about is in the 1960s when computers came out. Computers can multitask because it's a computer chip. It's a piece of hardware. It can do more than one task at a time. So human beings started thinking that they could do the same thing. So people started teaching multitasking. And then this is where a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of lack of focus and concentration started coming in. This is where people think they have ADHD or ADD because their mind is unconcentrated, because their mind's been rapidly cycling from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. They've never trained it to have concentration. So what the Buddha is teaching you is to have singleness of mind so you can cultivate concentration. So if you're talking on the phone to your mom, you're watching TV, and you're eating a sandwich, your mind's not actually doing all 3 things. Your mind's rapidly cycling from thing to thing to thing to thing. And the delusion is that you think you're actually more productive, that you're doing this, but you're actually not. Because the conversation you're having with your mom that could have otherwise been 10, 15, 20 minutes, it's now 45 minutes or an hour because you haven't been focused on the conversation. And you probably said something you regret later. And you might have even agreed to something to do for your mom. And when you got off the phone, you totally forgot. You're like, I got to call mom back and I got to get a reminder of what I'm supposed to do because I can't even remember. Or whatever TV program you were watching, you didn't really fully digest it. Right? You didn't really fully learn what it is you were looking to learn or enjoy or whatever. Or the sandwich, you didn't really fully digest the sandwich and enjoy that. Now you got a stomach ache. You got to lay in bed for the next hour and get over your stomach ache. So the mind thinks it's actually accomplishing more by doing this. But now you got to go back and clean up your relationship with your mom because you might have said something bitter and harsh and hostile because you weren't able to bring your full wisdom to use right speech in that situation. Whereas if you just have your conversation with your mom and you just focus on that, you can bring forth your full wisdom and your mind can be focused and refined. Or if you just watch TV, now you can fully enjoy the program. Or if you just eat, you can just eat and ingest the food and nourish the body. But if you're trying to do all 3 things, your mind's rapidly cycling and you're going to find that you have stress and anxiety and it's difficult for you to relax in certain situations. So the Buddha teaches you to train your mind to have singleness of mind. If you're washing the dishes, just wash the dishes. If you're talking on the phone, just talk on the phone. If you're walking down the street, you just walk down the street. But if you're walking down the street and you're on your mobile phone, your mind's not focused. It's not concentrated. People have died because of this, right? They're walking down the street in a busy city. They're talking on their phone and they walked out in front of a car because they weren't paying attention to the traffic. And boom, they're dead, right? Because they didn't understand the natural laws of existence and what the Buddha is teaching. So when you practice these natural laws, you're going to make wiser decisions. You'll develop this concentration through your meditation and through practicing singleness of mind. If you think about a piece of wood and you think about a steel rod, if you drag this steel rod across the wood back and forth, initially this steel rod's going to bounce around a lot because there's not a groove yet. So when you first start practicing this, your mind's going to be bouncing around a lot. But if you grind this steel rod back and forth enough, eventually you're going to get a deeper and deeper groove in the wood. And it might pop out from time to time, but you're going to know that it popped out and you're going to bring it right back and then you get back into the groove. But eventually, if you drag this steel rod back and forth on this wood enough, you're going to get a really deep groove in the wood and it's not going to pop out because it's too deep into the wood. So your mind is the same way. If you practice singleness of mind and meditation on a regular, consistent, ongoing basis, your mind will get so focused and so concentrated that it's impossible for your mind to pop out of that because you got this deep groove, right? You'll be able to talk very focused, very concentrated in any situation that you're in. If you're in a business meeting, if you notice your mind wandering, cut that off. Bring the mind back. If you're on a conversation with a friend or a family member and you notice your mind wandering, cut that off, bring it back. If you're noticing you're eating and you're looking at your phone or you're looking at an iPad or something, don't do that. Because what you're trying to do is you're maybe bored just sitting there eating because of your craving, because of your desire. You're wanting to be stimulated. But if you have this phone or this iPad or what have you, that's not going to solve the problem. You're just feeding the craving. You're just giving the mind what it wants in that situation. You haven't extinguished your craving. You need to learn how to eat and just eat and just eat and be joyful just eating without anything else. You don't need anything else. But if you're always trying to get this phone or this iPad, that phone or iPad is impermanent. You're not going to always have it with you. So if you're truly interested in getting rid of that boredom or that loneliness, get rid of the devices and just focus on eating and be joyful eating. And initially, you're going to have some boredom and some loneliness. But over time, you'll get to the point where you're perfectly content just sitting there eating. And you can just eat. And then you don't need to have all this stuff. You can have focus and concentration. So this is right concentration that the Buddha is teaching, to have a meditation practice and practicing singleness of mind in daily life. And this is something you're going to need to build up to. This is going to help you to develop mindfulness and then apply right effort to be able to cut off and let go of anything that's coming up. So here's a summary. Right effort is taking initiative to eliminate the unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate the wholesome qualities. You're going to need to apply the effort to do that. Then there's right mindfulness, which is awareness of mind with the four foundations of mindfulness. So you're interested in cultivating general awareness of mind, but then more specifically, develop awareness of the bodily sensations that are arising due to craving, desire, attachment. Cultivate the awareness of the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. And this is something you'd build up gradually. Then there's right concentration, which is practicing meditation and developing singleness of mind to the point where you are then experiencing the jhanas, which are these preliminary phases that the mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. And you'll learn more about those jhanas in other programs and courses and retreats that I teach. Okay, so you'll need to build up this breathing mindfulness meditation, which is what I'm teaching you in this course. And then there's loving kindness meditation, which you can learn in other courses and other programs and videos and books and things like that I share. Okay, so any questions on these three steps? Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration?
Hi, thank you so much for lecture. So it's not directly related to this topic, but yesterday I think it's mentioned a middle path when Buddha went to jungle or forest, and then the family really concerned his kind of so body or mind, then so offer some rice, and then the Buddha decided to eat rice or anyway food. So and then after that, I think you mentioned so the Buddha took the middle path. I think I like to know a little bit more detail about the middle path. It sounds like a balanced mind, so maybe not the extreme way, but something different. So
you like to know more about the middle way, right?
Yeah, right.
This is the middle way, the Eightfold Path. This is what he describes as the middle way. That when you don't understand this, your mind's not in the middle when you're not practicing this. This is why your mind gets shaken up by all the various things that you experience. Somebody says something impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful to you. You get angry, you get frustrated because of that. That's because your mind's craving for people to be permanently polite, kind, friendly, respectful to you. So we're not talking about what's wise or unwise in that example, but with wrong view, your mind will crave everybody to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to you. And when you get what you want, you'll be happy. But when you don't get what you want, you'll get frustrated or agitated or annoyed. But you can eliminate that from your mind, where you understand impermanence, that you prefer to be around people who are polite, kind, friendly, respectful, but you're going to encounter people who are disrespectful and who are unkind, and that's okay. That's their choice. It's affecting them, but you don't have to allow it to affect your mind. Whereas if you form your inner feelings based on some experience that you're having, now because your experiences are impermanent in the world, that means your feelings are going to be impermanent too. To get to this permanent peace and permanent joy, you need to train your mind to not base its inner feelings based on something that's happening in the world. So if there's no war in the world, you'll be happy. If there's a war in the world, you're going to be sad and you're going to be frustrated. This is the mind forming its inner feelings on some condition, and it's not in the middle because it's craving for things to be a certain way, and you can only be happy if you get things that way. Or the mind can be indifferent, where you could care less about what's going on in the world. Either side of that, you're not going to be peaceful and joyful. So you need to come to this middle where you understand that things are constantly changing in the world. And as soon as you crave for things to be one way or another, then you're going to be discontent. Because if you get what you want, you get discontent with pleasant feelings. And if you don't get what you want, you get the painful feelings. So the middle way is to let all that go. And this is the way that it trains your mind to be able to let all that go.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, looks like Rachel has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, David. Could you elaborate on mental objects? Because I think I didn't follow this well. Or could you name some examples of mental objects?
Sure. So when we talk about mental objects, we usually talk about them in terms of unwholesome mental objects. And those 10 fetters that I introduced you guys to yesterday, those are all mental objects. So personal existence view, doubt, wrong behavior and observances, sensual desire, ill will, desire for form, desire for formless, conceit, restlessness and worry, that ignorance or unknowing of true reality. Those pollutions of mind, those are all mental objects. But there's also times when we refer to mental objects in a more general sense. But here, when we're talking about the 4 foundations of mindfulness, we're talking about those deeply rooted containers in the mind. And we're generally talking about them as unwholesome qualities. But there are wholesome mental objects like loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity. Those are mental objects too. But what you're doing is you're uprooting the unwholesome mental objects, like the ill will, sensual desire, things like that. And then you're bringing in the wholesome qualities like loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, things like that. So these are all mental objects. They're deeply rooted containers in the mind. They're dynamic, where they're constantly changing, but yet they're consistent and persistent in the mind. It's like a mental state.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. See if we have any questions on YouTube or Facebook. Don't see any questions there. Okay, so what you'll need to do to get to enlightenment is you're going to need to learn, reflect, and practice on the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, which is what we just talked about. Tomorrow, we're going to be discussing the 5 precepts, which is going to plug into the Eightfold Path and give you more details about the things that you were learning in the Eightfold Path. You're going to need to develop a meditation practice, which is what we're just talking about a little bit today. And this afternoon, I'm going to talk about it in more detail. And you're going to need to focus on eliminating the 10 fetters. It's the Eightfold Path, which is the core central teaching that is going to teach you how to eliminate the 10 fetters. But first, you need to put together the Eightfold Path. That's usually where people start. And that's why it's part of the foundational program. And then as you get your arms around that for 6 months or a year or so, then you start focusing on the 10 fetters. But everything that the Buddha taught is helping you to eliminate the 10 fetters. So when you're learning how to not kill and steal and have sexual misconduct, that's helping you eliminate your sensual desire and your ill will, for example. So all of the teachings are helping you eliminate the 10 fetters, but initially you're just focused on getting your arms around these types of teachings like this. And what I encourage students to do is never give up. Because if you choose to give up on the path to enlightenment, it's like saying, okay, I'm just going to be angry for the rest of my life. I'm just going to be frustrated and annoyed and agitated. And you will experience rebirth, even though you might not be able to confirm that right now. If you gain the wisdom of how to verify this, you'll know that there is continuous rebirth. You'll experience this over and over and over again. So you're going to experience this anger and sadness and frustration for the rest of this life and future lives too, until you take action to fix it. And it's the Eightfold Path that's going to help you learn how to do that. So you'll need to learn this multiple times. You're going to need to know this like the back of your hand. So you'll need to revisit this. So there's actually some students here and some students online that are revisiting this for multiple times. So this might be your first time to get introduced to it. And it can seem like quite a lot when you're first learning, but each time you learn it, you implement it a little bit more in your life. You implement a little bit more, you integrate it slowly but surely. So don't feel like you have to learn all of it today and implement all of it today. That's not the way it works. You learned whatever you learned today, and now you integrate whatever parts of it you can, and you dial it in closer and closer. It's kind of like a speaker system. If you have a speaker system with 8 dials, you'd like to tweak these dials to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. And the same thing's true with your mind, that you have these 8 dials, the Eightfold Path. In this Eightfold Path, you're dialing this into your life closer and closer. You're kind of tweaking it. So right now, if you're really struggling with a meditation practice, maybe that's what you focus on, is developing your meditation practice. If you're really struggling with right speech, maybe you focus on that. But all of these factors are working together. You're not just mastering one before you move to the other. You're actually practicing them all. So you're dialing them all in at the same time. What the Buddha did is he would teach people right view first. That was the first thing that students would learn. Then he would start teaching them the moral conduct. Because as long as you're causing harm through your moral conduct, that harm's going to keep coming back to you. So you would like to shut that down. It's kind of like a dam that's open wide, spewing muddy water all over the place. You would like to shut that down as soon as possible, because it's going to keep coming back to you. So he would focus people on right view first, then the moral conduct, to be able to shut that down. And then, as part of that, develop your meditation practice as well, because that's going to support you with your moral conduct. So this is the Eightfold Path. You're going to need to learn this more than one time and gradually take your time to understand it. And I'm here to help you as you do that. We have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, classes, courses, retreats. You can join in person. You can join online. There's lots of options for you to learn. The only thing standing in your way is yourself, right? Your own dedication, your own diligence. Everything's available at no cost, right? Everything's available to you. So just gradually learn this piece by piece. And you'll see that as you're practicing it, the condition of your mind is going to slowly get better and better and better, including your relationships. Your relationships are going to get better and better and better. Okay? So now it's, Rachel, you have another question? Sorry. Go ahead, ma'am. Or was that hand up from before?
No, sorry, I forgot to put my hands down.
Oh, okay. No worries. So now is about 20 minutes after 12. Would you guys be okay with an hour and 10-minute break for lunch? I know we usually take an hour and a half, but would you guys be okay for an hour and 10 minutes? We'll come back at 1:30. Okay. All right. So I'll see you guys at 1:30. We're going to talk about breathing mindfulness meditation. I'm going to go into detail and explaining everything about that. And we're going to actually be doing a session this afternoon as well. So enjoy your lunch and we'll see you guys at 1:30. Okay. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.